welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you. Thank you. Hello, my name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it's my huge pleasure to welcome our many listeners, not only in this country, but around the world, but also to welcome to the programme four exciting personalities who are going to speak for just a minute on the subject that I give them, and they will try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviation. And they are, seated on my right, Paul Merton and Pam Ayres, and seated on my left, Graham Norton and Rufus Hound. Please welcome all four of them. Beside me, is Hayley Sterling. She's going to help with the score. She's going to blow the whistle when the 60 seconds have elapsed. So we'll begin the show with Paul Merton and the subject, Paul, optimism. Tell us something about optimism in just a minute, starting now.
There's a star man waiting in the sky. He'd like to come and meet us, but he'd think he'd blow our minds. When fans of David Bowie listen to his music, they were given a sense of optimism. He's... I was going to say music again. I suddenly got serious.
Graham, you challenge first.
Well, I feel awful for Charlie, but he did stop.
Absolutely.
It wasn't my fault. He stopped. It was a big old hesitation.
It was a definite hesitation.
I was going to suggest a minute's silence, but...
I think that deserves a bonus point, that report.
Thanks very much.
Anyway, Graham, a correct challenge. You get a point for that. You take over the subject. There are 49 seconds available. Optimism starting now.
If you meet someone over the age of, say, 30 who claims to be an optimist, I'll wager they aren't. What they are, in fact, is an idiot. They claim that hope triumphs over experience, but all that says to me is I've met a man or woman who has refused to learn the lessons that life is trying to teach them. Optimism is fine in the young, but then it wears thin. You look at someone like Jerry Hall. Is she an optimist? I don't know. I'm guessing that in her heart, she is hoping something, and that he doesn't...
Paul, you challenged.
I think she's marrying a man who's 84, so she's fairly optimistic.
That's a very good challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, not bad.
So, Paul, we say that's a correct challenge. And you have...
Wait a minute. Let's just recap. There's deviation, there's hesitation, and repetition. Which one was that?
Deviation.
Was it?
Well, because she
Jerry Hall is optimistic. The subject is optimism.
But isn't that his challenge?
But I was talking about her. I had the subject.
But in fairness, you sound as if you're a jilted lover. I'm not sure he's... Rupert or Jerry are to blame.
I understood his challenge to be she must be optimistic if she marries this man of 84.
Therefore, I'm talking about her when the subject is optimism.
I think he's right. I think he's right, yeah.
All right, but you're very good.
Though, if you see a picture of Mick Jagger and you see a picture of Rupert Murdoch, technically that's repetition.
Yeah.
A bonus point for Rufus. And I give way to you. Well done, Graham. You have the subject still. An incorrect challenge. A point for that. And you have 12 seconds still. Optimism starting now.
Each time I play this game, I am full of hope. Oh, I've said that before. That I might win. But of course, that is foolishness because I think I've won it once.
Paul, you've challenged.
Was there a slight hesitation there?
No.
Oh, right.
I'm not going to have him shout at me again.
No. He's bullied you into submission.
So no incorrect challenge, Graham. Another point to you, and you have 2 seconds to go, starting now.
Maybe this will be the week when I actually triumph, and
So at the end of the first round, you won't be surprised to hear that Graham Norton has taken a strong lead. And Pam, would you begin the next round? Oh, something close to your heart, I'm sure. The great outdoors. 60 seconds starting now.
I first learned to love the great outdoors as a young girl riding a borrowed pony through a local wood called Hatford Warren. Oh, it was so beautiful. And I used to ride along through the soft...
Yes, Rufus, you challenge.
Repetition of ride?
Well done. She was riding a RuPaul pony and she was riding along. Well listened, Rufus.
I am new to this, but keen to learn.
You've been a fast learner. You've gone in very rapidly there with 3 regulars against you. 46 seconds are still available, Rufus. The great outdoors starting now.
When you think of the world that is not in your house, the world you are thinking of... Yes. Yes.
I accuse him of saying world twice.
You were right, and it was so obvious I couldn't twist it so that to keep a newcomer in. Because I have to tell our listeners, the first time Rufus has played the game, and it was obvious from the way he started then. And Rufus, you've already contributed tremendously.
No,
it's lovely.
listen.
Right. But I have to give it to Pam on this occasion. Pam, the great outdoors, and there are 39 seconds still available, starting now.
Padded with generations of leaf fall and punctuated by fallen moss-encrusted logs. What undiluted joy it was to urge the equine forward and soar blissfully over these natural obstacles as the wind murmured in the canopy above us. Rabbits darted into the undergrowth, their white skirts showing, and the fragrance of the disturbed earth was more heady than any Frenchified.
Oh, Graham, you've
I think
challenged.
she's arousing the audience. It's not Radio 4.
It's a bit racy on Gardener's question time.
Someone's hit the hard shoulder listening to this.
So have you a challenge within the rules of just a minute, Graham?
Well, just plain old deviation, I would say.
From what?
From, well, just nice Radio 4 land. She'd taken us into some D.H. Lawrence bacchanal.
She painted a picture of the great outdoors to me.
I did.
And I was thinking of your blood pressure too, Nicholas.
Listen,
No, I was out there with her on
I
the
know,
moors.
you were looking very flushed.
You know, it was
listen, I was urging the equine forward. I was out in the great outdoors,
you
so
were in the
I was
great outdoors.
describing
She was
the
there,
rabbits,
and I was with
etc.
her by her side. It was like Wuthering Heights all over again.
I hotly resent the challenge, mister.
Well, you don't need to, Pam, because I give you the benefit of the doubt and say that you have another point, and you have 2 seconds to continue, if you wish, on the great outdoors starting now.
Than any brothel-like perfume. What halcyon days they were.
That wasn't my buzz, it was an automatic system that kicked in.
So your
I
challenge?
was saying that the fragrance of the disturbed earth was more heady than any Frenchified, exotic, brothel-like perfume.
I'm sorry, Rufus, I know you challenged again, but what was your challenge for?
Oh, I've forgotten. I thought
Have you got a challenge within the rules of just a minute?
No, I haven't, no.
Well, then, Pam, you've got another point. 2 seconds. The great outdoors starting now.
Boiling up the billy can and enjoying...
So Pam Ayres with entries as the whistle went, and whoever is speaking in this game when the whistle goes gains an extra point. So Pam Ayres is now equal with Graham Norton, the lead, one ahead of Rufus, Hound and Paul Merton. And Rufus, it's with you to begin. The subject is humble pie. Can you tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now?
So often in life, one chances your arm in making a statement or offering a joke which could fall foul of the listener. Under these conditions, an apology should be immediately proffered. If not, and yet later it is decided that you have transgressed in some way, you should be made to eat humble pie. It is a posh way of saying, say sorry, why don't you? And yet, at the same time, conveys, does it not, a...
I love the way you laugh at your misdemeanors there, Rufus, right?
It's because I can hear myself on the radio, sitting at home, listening to the radio, going, this bloke's rubbish at this.
It takes a little while to get acclimatised, but you're doing well. It's much better than the first time you spoke.
Yes. Slow improvement.
Yes. Pam, you challenge first. Yes, hesitation. And there are 29 seconds available. Humble pie, starting now.
Humble pie is a disgusting concoction of liver, lights, heart, and all the offal that drops out of a carcass of an animal when it is opened up in the abattoir.
Graham, challenge.
What the hell has happened to Pam Ayres? She's now like, I don't know, some sort of like medieval butcher. A minute ago, rubbing herself like against a horse. This isn't the woman I've met before.
So what is your challenge? When
Deviation from Pam Ayres.
Well, all I can do
Do you
then...
have ID on you, Pam?
All I can do then, because we enjoyed that interruption, we'll give you a bonus point for what you've just said. But She wasn't deviating in any way from the subject of humble pie. So, Pam, another point to you, and 16 seconds available starting now.
Traditionally eaten by the peasantry and those who did not have two halfpennies to rub together. On the other hand, humble pie suggests being shamed.
Paul, you challenged.
Oh, that was hesitation.
There was a definite hesitation there, Paul. So you have a point, and you have the subject, humble pie. And 4 seconds to go, starting now.
Dear Gardener's question time. My husband can't find my clematis. So
Paul Merton and speakers of whistle when gain that extra point. It's very, very close. Who's challenged? Pam, yes?
I don't know what that had to do with humble pie.
very little.
Right. Graham, we're back with you to begin. The subject is famous last words. Tell us something about that subject in this game, if you can, starting now.
Poor dying people. Not bad enough to be lying on your deathbed, taking your last breath, but there's the added pressure to come up with something profound or witty to sign off with. And even if you do come up with something bon mot-ish...
Oh, Pam challenge.
I thought there was a repetition of come up with.
And something as well.
Yes,
all right.
Yes, like
well,
roses.
listen, Pam. And 44 seconds, famous last words with you starting now.
George V is reputed to have said bugger bogner as his last words, but I don't actually think they were. I think it was suggested to him. I just said
Rufus
it
challenge.
It was a repetition of think, but I only got there because you paused in the middle, like, oh, well, that's me done then.
No, you're not done. You were in there with a point for a correct challenge, Rufus, and you've got the subject of famous last words starting now.
I've just realised that I know absolutely nobody's famous last words, but instead now I find myself imagining, looking at this panel, what the famous last words of each member on it would be. For example, Pam might say something along the lines of, what rhymes with carkit? But I like to think that maybe... No.
Pam challenge.
I object. That makes me sound like an idiot.
It would be a strange world where those words became famous.
What rhymes with carkit? Lots of things.
I think I've been giving bonus points. Graham's got one, Paul's got one. Pam, you have one for an amusing interruption then.
Good.
And you get a point for that. But you get a point because it's an incorrect challenge.
Yes.
And you have 15 seconds available for famous last words starting now. Paul challenge.
Hesitation.
It was hesitation. And you've only played the game. You haven't played the game once yet.
No?
So when I say start now...
Yes.
I think that rule applies to everything, Nicholas, not just this game.
Yes, it does, but we're not down to basics like that. Paul, it was a correct challenge, so we give you the point for that. But we leave it with Rufus, and you've got 14 seconds still, Rufus. You ready?
No.
No.
Could you give me 25 minutes and a writer?
This audience wouldn't. I could, but...
I'll have a poppadom if you'll get a writer.
Oh, dear. All right. 14 seconds, Rufus. Take a breath. Famous last words starting now.
So my agent phones me and says, we would like to be the ones to tell you you've been invited to go on a world-famous radio show, a bastion of British broadcasting. Would you like to go on it? And I said, yes!
So, Rufus, you get a point for speaking as a whistle and gain that extra point. And you're in second place behind Pam Ayres. And you're just one ahead of Graham Norton and Paul Merton. Paul, we're back with you to begin.
Yes.
The subject is a day at the races. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
Well, it's both the title of a Marx Brothers film made in 1938 and an LP by the rock group Queen, A Day at the Races. It's one of the more famous films that MGM made in the 1930s.
Pam challenge.
I thought there was a repetition of film, but it might have been plural. It might have been film and film.
No, it was
Interesting.
MGM.
Pardon?
Repetition of M.
Yes. Good point, Nicholas. Pam, you have the subject.
No, Paul, I have to let them know that I'm listening.
Oh, well, I know you're listening.
But Pam, I can't give it to you because it wasn't your challenge. So...
No, I thought Paul started off by saying it's the name of a film and something else. But
I think we give the benefit of the doubt to Paul and say 48 seconds still available, Paul. A day at the races starting now.
So Clement Freud, who used to sit in the chair that Pam Ayres is now seated in, was a keen race goer, and he would often spend a day at the races. In the seats... Oh, no.
Pam, you see you got in anyway. There we are.
well, I thought it was hesitation.
You thought it. It was definitely hesitation,
absolutely.
right. Okay. And Pam, you've got him with 37 seconds to go. A day at the races starting now.
My favourite day at the races is Byberry Duck Race, which takes place on Boxing Day along the River Churn, where decoy birds are placed into the water with numbers on their backs, and you have to bet on them, and all the money goes to charity, and a man walks along in waders behind them, shooing them along, and the first past the winning post is the winner, as you might think.
Oh, you challenged.
There was a bit of a hesitation,
There was a bit, yes. So, Paul, you've got in with 10 seconds to go on a day at the races starting now.
The King George IV chase has been run for 30 years. I thought to myself the other day, haven't they caught him yet? He must be a busy man, running down the track like this, keeping his crown on. Ha ha, suckers, you'll never get me.
I think he challenged just before the whistle, Graham.
It's a
What was it?
repetition of ha.
Yes. No, there was.
No, and I feel awful.
Yes.
I had no idea that it was going to kind of hit the bell so close. It's terrible.
Yes.
Well, that's the game, isn't it?
In fairness, it is.
And yes. And you cleverly got in with half a second to go.
Yes.
A day at the races starting now.
A day at the races and yay!
Right, it's neck and neck. If you're interested in the scores, only 1 point separates all four of them. And Pam, we're back with you to begin. And the subject is William Shakespeare. Tell us something about that erudite subject in this game, starting now.
I was once called upon to perform a tract from the Taming of the Shrew, and I assumed my most dramatic expression of entreaty, walked out and began, fie, twice, unknit that unkind wrinkled brow, and dart not scornful glances from those eyes, to wound thy lord and king, your master, he who cares for thee. Whereupon, seeing the adjudicator in the audience, I observed that her face had frozen into an expression of shock and disbelief at my interpretation of the deathless words of the bard.
A justified round of applause. And Paul, you've got in...
Hesitation.
Hesitation, right. William Shakespeare's with you, Paul, now. 18 seconds starting now.
Glamorous thou art and Cawdor, and shalt be what thou art promised. Yet do I fear thy nature. It is too full of the milk of human kindness to catch the nearest way. Thou wouldst be great, art not. Well, that was Shakespeare. Shakespeare. Then.
Repetition of thou.
Blame Shakespeare. Shakespeare's. Yeah, that's true. It was. Yeah.
Graham, you've again got in very close to the whistle. There's still 5 seconds available.
Oh, 5 seconds this time. This will stretch you. You'll have to say his name 3 times.
5 seconds, Graham. William Shakespeare, starting now.
William Shakespeare lived in a place called Stratford-upon-Avon, I believe, and was married to the Oscar winner.
So Graham Norton was then speakers. The whistle went. Oh, Graham is now equal in the lead with Pam Ayres, and 1 point behind is Paul Merton, and then 2 points behind is Rufus Hound. And Rufus, we're back with you to begin. I don't know why you got the subject. Maybe you know about it, maybe not, but otherwise try and talk on the subject of the Isle of Man. 60 seconds. There's nothing funny about that. But I'm glad you laugh, because we play for every little chuckle we can get. Rufus, the Isle of Man's with you, starting now.
They say no man is an island except when he's in the bath. The Isle of Man is not a man who is an isle. He is instead a place where, off the coast...
It's like looking at a dog limping down the road.
Well done, Rufus. I didn't understand any of it, but there's nothing. Yeah. No. What is your challenge, Paul?
Pity. He was revolving around an Isle of Man thing. Well, no. I'm wrong, actually. I don't have a challenge.
Well,
you do.
If you want it back, you can have it back if you want it back.
Oh, you're
Let him
very
have it back.
generous.
Go on, give me one more. Give me a go.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
Let me
yeah,
limber up.
Yeah, exactly.
very generous, Paul, because he was
Don't
struggling.
be so
a bit.
surprised by what you're saying.
It's the weirdest thing. Just talking comes naturally to me, but the moment Nicholas Parsons says now, every thought in my brain disappears out of my bum hold.
There are still 48 seconds, Rufus.
Okay.
Paul has given it back to you.
I will grind every one of these out.
Take a
12
deep
seconds,
breath.
12 seconds are gone. Look at it that way. 12 seconds are finished.
Yeah.
You're never getting them back.
Rufus,
The last time somebody said that to me, I just lost my virginity.
What goes on before the show should be...
I'm in.
So, Rufus, you have another point, of course.
Yeah.
Incorrect order for generosity of Paul.
Yeah.
48 seconds available, starting now.
I have no idea where the Isle of Man is. The only thing I know about the Isle of Man is that the Isle of Man has the TT races.
Curiously, I would say it's a repetition of T, but also you can slow right down. You don't have to talk as fast as you're talking. Which, ironically, you then said TT races, but I'll let you have the subject again. A third go, another go. Another go. What do you think, Nicola? Do you agree?
Yeah. The fair thing is to give Paul a point for a correct challenge, because he did say TT, but he's very generously given it back to you.
I mean, to be fair, it's a good way of winning points. It's just...
42 seconds
And also,
to go.
I'm not sure anyone wants the subject to be honest.
Oh, I don't know. I could talk about the Isle of Man quite
I'm sure you
happily,
could.
but yes. I've been there. My association is Kiwis.
Oh, now he is.
You knew it before it was an island, when it was still attached to the mainland.
Why do you clap his insults? Shall I tell you what happened? I was doing a show over there, and I rushed to catch the plane back, and I bought some of these wonderful kippers, which they cook on the beach, and took them in my bag. I got on the aeroplane, and the whole of the plane stank of cooked kippers. I just kept still, pretending it wasn't me.
Perhaps you said to the pilot afterwards, I apologise for the smell, and he said, thank you for apologising. If you hadn't said anything, I'd have sworn it was the kippers. That's the only way out from that one.
I don't know if you were clapping Paul and my reaction. I don't know. Rufus, he's giving it back to you. There are 42 seconds available. Your favourite subject, the Isle of Man, starting now.
The Isle of Man does remind me of a very funny story that was told to me not so long ago. A friend of mine had been on the Isle of Man and bought some smoked fish, and he was getting on the aeroplane, and the smell of these kippers was overpowering. The other passengers were very upset about it. Indeed, he feared that the pilot might also be rather concerned, and as he disembarked, he turned to him, twinkling in his eyes, and said, I do apologise for the smell. And the man who had flown the aeroplane replied, well, thank you for saying you're sorry. I thought it was the swimming items that had been processed in salt.
So, Rufus, you get a point for speaking as a whistle and gain that extra point. Rufus, you're in second place. The other three are equal in the lead, but only 1 point ahead of you. So for a first-time player of the game, you are doing magnificently.
Thank you very much.
And this is the last round, I've been told. Oh, let me give you... Right, let me give you the situation. Well, I actually indicated what it might be. Rufus Hound has never played the game before. He's doing... Don't laugh. You're doing
No,
no.
I just don't think anybody listening doubts that.
You are only 1 point behind the other three players, Paul, Pam and Graham, who are equal in the lead, ahead of you by 1 point. So it's all to play for if you're interested in the points. And Graham, we're back with you to begin. The subject now is Catch 22. Tell us something about that phrase in this game starting now.
Catch 22 is a book and a film. The Pages bit was written by Joseph Heller, I believe. The film... Oh, I've said that twice.
Yeah. Pam, you challenge first.
A repetition of film.
Yeah,
Yes,
the film.
Pam, well
Yes,
heard.
Pam. So, There are 51 seconds available. Catch 22, Pam, starting now.
I was walking along the banks of the Thames beside Tadpole Bridge, a famous and venerable old structure, and I met a man who had been fishing. "How did you get on?" I said. He said, "I caught 21. And I said, "Oh."
I looked at you, Pam, and I waited for the payoff, and you suddenly dried. Oh, right. So, Paul, you came in
what the
first.
next line might have been? Yeah, I dried, I'm afraid.
Oh, you did dry. Anyway, it was a hesitation. Paul, you have another point. 31 seconds available. Catch 22 starting now.
The film was made around about 1970, directed by Mike Nichols, and Orson Welles played a very large part within the movie. It was a magnificent book written by Joseph Heller at the beginning of the 1960s, and initially it was called Catch 18, but there was another book with a similar title with that number in it, so at the very last minute it was changed to Catch 22, which somehow is much catchier if you excuse the pun. That's not really one of those because it's virtually the same word. I was reading this book when I was about...
Oh, Graham challenged.
Reference to book.
Yes.
Yes, the book.
I was trying to avoid repeating film.
Another
done that.
point to you, Graham, and you have got in with 2 seconds to go.
It's like I'm doing an impression of someone who's good at this game. Anyway, sorry.
No.
Sorry.
Well, that's the game.
Yeah,
Part of the fun, isn't it? Part of the tension.
Absolutely.
And 2 seconds to go, Graham. Catch 22 starting now.
It takes a very smart man to be the president.
So Graham Norton was then speaking as the whistle went, and Rufus, who's never played the game before, but did very well. He was a very commanding fourth place. And, no, but he was only 2 points behind Pam Ayres and Paul Merton, equal in second place, but 1 point ahead. So we say you are the winner this week. That is Graham Norton. We do hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute, and it only remains for me to say thank you to these 4 fine and humorous players of the game, Paul Merton, Pam Ayres, Graham Norton and Rufus Hound. I thank Hayley Sterling, who's helped me with the score, blown her whistle with such style when the 60 seconds elapsed. We thank our producer, Victoria Lloyd. We're indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this amazing game, and we're very grateful to this lovely, exciting-looking audience here who've cheered us on our way magnificent. They've been part of the show. So from our lovely audience and from me, Nicholas Parsons, and the team, goodbye, thank you, and tune in again the same time when we play Just a Minute! Yes. Welcome to Just a Minute. My name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it's my huge pleasure to welcome our many listeners, not only in this country, but around the world, but also to welcome to the programme 4 exciting personalities who this week are going to show their skill with words and language as they speak on a subject that I give them, and they try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviation. And they are, seated on my right, Paul Merton and Tim Rice, and seated on my left, Gyles Brandreth and Esther Rantzen. Will you please welcome all 4 of them? Beside me sits Hayley Sterling. She's going to help me keep the score, and she will blow a whistle when the 60 seconds have elapsed. And we begin the show with Paul Merton. Oh, Paul, a lovely subject. I mean, I adore Bubble and Squeak. Tell us something about Bubble and Squeak in this game, Paul, starting now.
Well, Bubble and Squeak is a name given to a dish which essentially is fried made-overs from the previous meal. You have a bit of cabbage, potato. Some sources say that carrot is allowed. World War II was a popular time for having this kind of thing when rationing was very much prevalent in the day. Nicholas Parsons, the finest pilot the Luftwaffe had ever had, was one day saying to himself, I would like to have some Bubble and Squeak. I realised what I said there was actually an undercover agent. He wasn't really a Nazi, but he was in the sky.
Tim, you've challenged.
I thought there was a hesitation there.
Well, yes, there was, yeah.
Thank you.
Only because he was being rude to me again. Right. Tim, I agree. You have a point for a correct challenge. You take over the subject, and there are 29 seconds still available. Bubble and Squeak starting now.
My brother Andy, when he was only 6, had 2 rabbits, of which he was very fond. One was named Bubble, and the other was called Squeak. Now, the interesting thing about this kind of animal is that whenever...
Gyles.
Repetition of animal.
No, he said two animals.
Oh, two. I meant the word two.
Did you say he had...
2. Repetition of 2.
Yeah, it's very dodgy, bro.
No, he didn't say animal, he said animals.
Yeah. I said
Yes.
rabbits first time.
Yeah. Rabbits.
Rabbits.
So he didn't repeat the word animal.
I was just trying to keep you on your toes, Nicholas.
Thank you very much. An incorrect challenge, Tim. Have another point. You have the subject. 17 seconds still available. Bubble and Squeak starting now.
These animals were... Oh.
I seem to have the gift of foresight. Repetition of animals.
Well done, Gyles. You created that for yourself. Well done. 15 seconds are still available. You have a point. You have Bubble and Squeak starting now.
Nicholas, did you ever have pet names for your private parts? Along the lines of...
I think the answer to that question is certainly not. For decency, human decency.
Excuse me, you accused him of being possibly a Nazi, certainly a member of the Luftwaffe. All I'm saying is he called his private parts Bubble and Squeak.
I didn't have a pet name for my private parts. I remember our parents, it was a very ordered time in which we grew up, we used to call them Rudies. A very strange word for them. I wish I hadn't said that now, because it's the audience, right?
So it turns out that you did have a pet name for your private part, Rudies, and therefore the challenge has to be invalid.
Yes. Who challenged?
Well, out of a sense of moral duty, I challenge. But I don't have a challenge under the rules of just a minute, so I'm quite happy for...
I'm rather shocked by this whole story because I didn't realise that Nicholas had a German past, but the fact that he called his private parts Rudy obviously means that he had.
Very good.
Very good.
The best thing I suggest is we start the programme again.
Yeah. Hermann, Rudi, and Adolf were his 3 private parts. That is so.
Right, so, Gyles, incorrect challenge, and so you have a point. 10 seconds still available. Bubble and Squeak starting now.
Bubble and Squeak was one of the great Victorian vaudeville acts. They appeared along with Dan Leno, Herbert Campbell in the Arthur Collins Company in 1858. And remarkable it was...
A poor challenge.
That's a bit early, 1858
You're
for Dan
absolutely
Leno.
right. You're absolutely right. He's completely correct. Arthur Collins didn't take over at Drury Lane until 1892. I bow to his superiority.
So your knowledge of show business, Paul, helps you again, and you have a correct challenge, and you have half a second to go. Bubble and Squeak starting now.
You can squeak my...
Whoever is speaking this game, when the whistle goes, gains an extra point. It was Paul Merton. And at the end of that round, they all have 2 points. Esther hasn't got any yet, but she has contributed very well. And, Tim, we're with you to begin the next round. A leap year. Will you tell us something about that in this game, starting now?
As everybody knows, the Earth takes 365 days to go once around the sun.
Esther, you remember it.
365 and a quarter days.
Well, I was coming on to this.
But you hadn't yet come onto it.
True, but I'd only been going for 9 seconds.
Do you get minus points for pedantry?
You could do, but I won't do it on this occasion. No, I don't think it's necessary, Esther, but well tried. Just relax, Dalí. Have fun. A point to you, Tim. 53 seconds still available. A leap year starting now.
However, every so often, round this...
Paul challenge.
Oh, repetition of round
Yes,
the sun.
right.
Yes.
So, Paul, you've got in there.
thrown.
With 49 seconds to go, the subject is a leap year starting now.
I left the civil service on February the 29th, 1980, which, if you go by leap years, is only 9 years ago. But I suppose what I...
Esther challenge.
Did he say 9 years ago?
Yes, because he didn't want to say years. He'd already used the word years.
Yeah.
So is it a deviation from sense?
No, it doesn't really matter in this game. Paul, an incorrect challenge. 40 seconds are still available. A leap year starting now.
That was a long time ago indeed.
Tim challenge.
Repetition of a go?
Yes. You did say a go before.
Yeah, possibly, yeah.
Yes, right. So, Tim, you have another point. You have the subject. 37 seconds still available. A leap year starting now.
I would like to go on a completely different tack for several reasons.
Paul, challenge.
Deviation. By definition, completely different tack.
I know. I think what I have to do there, Paul, is say it was a devious thought, but he wasn't actually...
I was going to come back to a whole new approach
Yes.
to the leap year challenge.
I think he's entitled to that one. So an incorrect challenge. Tim, another point. 33 seconds available. A leap year starting now.
The high jump was completely revolutionised by Dick Fosbury in 1968 when he invented a jump named after his...
Gyles challenge.
Repetition of jump.
Yes.
Well, it was high jump before.
The high jump, when he invented
Yes, high
a
jump and jump are two different words.
No, high jump is 2 words, and jump is a repetition of the earlier jump.
He's played the game a few times before, Tim. There's a point to Gyles. And 25 seconds, Gyles. A leap year starting now.
One of the extraordinary things about the Soviet Empire is that in the USSR, in the year 1931...
Oh, yes, Paul, you spotted it earlier.
double S.
Yes, repetition of S.
Oh. Yeah, no.
2 initials that our chairman is more than familiar
No,
with.
you're right. I think the SS is becoming something of a theme.
I had no German connections. I have nothing to do with those people.
We were just confused by the uniform you're wearing.
Paul, well, listen, the correct challenge. 19 seconds, a leap year starting now.
I remember very clearly the leap year in question, February, March. I mentioned February before.
Yes.
Exactly,
Repetition of
February.
That's right, February, March again. And you're back with you, the leap year, Gyles. 14 seconds available, starting now.
It is also known as a bisextile year, which is one of the reasons that transgender people use the opportunity of the 29th of February to make their leap into a new and exciting world. It's a remarkable nomenclature, and one that has given encouragement...
So Gyles is speaking when the whistle went. And it's even Stevens there. Paul, Tim and Gyles are all equal in the lead. And Esther, we're with you to begin. The subject, the Domesday Book. Tell us something about that popular subject in this game, starting now.
I always thought the doom in Domesday meant fate or destiny, but it turns out it means judgment, because the Domesday Book was assessed by Saxons on their tax liability in order to pay the Normans every possible groat or farthing they owned. This, I think, has an inspiration for these days inland revenue officials, because if they were to arrive at one's doorstep on the back of a mule or an ass or a donkey, dressed in homespun robes, with a rucksack on their back containing a quill and perhaps some old-fashioned ink in order to create a book in wonderful calligraphy entirely written in Latin, maybe none of the panelists would...
Well done, Esther.
I cannot believe all that concentration led me nowhere.
That's the irony of this game. You went so well.
You work like mad, and then someone leaps in and grabs it from you. A bit like tax,
Can
really.
I say, Esther, that's life.
You went for 48 seconds. Well done.
I can't believe it.
Yes.
So near and yet so far.
But that's just a minute. It's part of the fun of the show, my love.
Of course. I'm not
Paul, you
complaining.
challenge first.
Hesitation.
Yes. 12 seconds are still available on the Domesday Book, Paul, starting now.
The book lay in the corner of the room, its cover extremely dusty. I knew I'd been the last person in that vicinity within the past 24 hours.
Gyles challenge.
Repetition of past.
Last and past.
Last person.
It was a blast from the last past? I felt I heard past twice, but...
No, he was last.
The way he asserts it, you believe him, because he said it. But it's possible you're right.
No, because it's so difficult sometimes to pick up these quick things, I'll have to ask you to be honest. Paul, did you say past?
I thought I said past and last.
I expected
I thought
it.
you did as well. The Domesday Book, Paul, starting now.
The Domesday Book weighed much heavier than I...
Paul Merton was speaking of the whistle when again, that extra point, and Gyles, we're with you to begin, and the subject is A Mission to Mars. Tell us something about that in this game, starting now.
It was when I realized that a planet had been named after a chocolate bar that I came to the conclusion that this was to be the subject of my next musical. I called Tim Rice to ask him if he wanted to cooperate. He said, "Do you write music?" I said, "No." He said, "I do the words, and so I am doing this all on my Todd. It's most amusing. I appear as a kind of Dan Dare figure, leaping about. Act 1, we are in the spaceship. It's an intergalactic rock opera, and Colonel Tim, as he's called..."
Tim challenge.
Repetition of Tim.
Yes.
Yes. Well listened, Tim. You wouldn't miss
Always
that
hear
one.
your own name across a crowded room, don't you?
Tim, the correct challenge. A point to you. 28 seconds still available. A Mission to Mars starting now.
Mars is a very interesting place. It is a ball, a sphere of 4,225 miles in diameter. Around it move two small, extremely tiny, diminutive moons named Phobos and Deimos. These tiny objects zap through the Martian sky at the speed of a tortoise. A space tortoise, not...
Oh, you slipped yourself up then.
I was going
and
so
you only
well.
had 2 seconds to go. So,
A space
Paul, you
tortoise
challenge
is one
first.
word.
Yes,
surely.
improbable repetition of tortoise on a mission of Mars as a subject.
So, Paul, the correct challenge. A Mission to Mars, 2 seconds starting now.
I decided to send my tortoise all the way to Mars, and when he...
So with another point with Paul, he's now taken a strong lead ahead of Tim Rice and Gyles Brandreth in that order, and then Esther. And Paul, we're back with you to begin. The subject is the Great Barrier Reef. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
Well, the Great Barrier Reef is one of those objects that you can see from outer space. Mind you have to be looking in the right direction. There's no good pointing towards Uranus. You won't see any starfish at all. Whereas if you're looking down at the planet, you can say to yourself, look at that magnificence.
Tim, challenge.
Repetition of look?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Tim, you've got him. 45 seconds to go. The Great Barrier Reef, starting now.
The Great Barrier Reef is a long, thin thing which can be seen from space, as the genius on my right has already pointed out, but I would like to emphasize this because I haven't said it before. And above all, the interesting thing of the Barrier Reef is that it is a living object. Comprise...
Gyles, challenge. Yes.
Hesitation.
I was
I'm
taking a
afraid
breath.
so, yes. Correct challenge. It was too long a breath, I'm afraid. And there are 24 seconds still available, Gyles. The Great Barrier Reef, starting now.
The Great Barrier Reef is the title of the musical that I am now writing with Sir Tim Rice, starring Tom Jones and Tammy Grimes. It is going to be a huge success about a girl called Coral who has a bit of rough called Reef, and together they explore what life is like.
Oh, Esther, you were so quick. You pressed your buzzer. Yes, what's your challenge?
Deviation from the truth. I can't believe a word of what you're saying.
Exactly what I was going to suggest, yes.
Esther, don't you have dreams? Don't you have dreams? I thought that was
you
the
didn't
purpose.
establish, Gyles, that it was a dream. You made it out as a fact.
Well, because, of course, for me, life, the fact of life is a dream. That I could be here with you.
You are a great arguer, but you're failing dismally now.
Okay.
Well listened, Esther.
Thank you.
I mean, please.
Chair,
Preposterous.
can you just reassure me, how many seconds have
You've
I
only got 3 seconds.
Really?
Right, you can do this, Esther, you can do this, you can
The
do
Great Barrier
this.
Reef, Esther, 3 seconds starting now.
The Great Barrier Reef is somewhere off Australia, and I've actually been there, but it was a waste of time.
So Esther Rantzen, speak as a whistle when, gained that extra point, and she has leapt forward. She's still in 4th place, but she has... And out in the lead is Paul Merton, and Tim, we're back with you to begin. The subject, an intellectual one here, Isambard Kingdom Brunel. Tell us something about that amazing man in this game, starting now.
When Isambard Kingdom Brunel was born, his parents had not decided upon those exotic names. They played around with the idea of Kevin or Phil. but in the end changed and settled for Isambard, a very distinguished starter for his moniker. His middle name had to be something...
Handle. There was hesitation there.
I'm afraid there was. It was so clever and interesting that you tripped yourself up.
Well, if you give it back to me, I'll continue.
Well, I was being sarcastic, actually. Gyles,
That's nice, isn't it? That's nice.
Gyles, the correct challenge. 41 seconds still available. Isambard, Kingdom, Brunel, starting now.
Our musical about Isambard, Kingdom, Brunel ran aground because we couldn't make Brunel rhyme with funnel. So we changed the name of the show to Isambard, Kingdom, Brunel, which didn't bring the punters in. Though I was very fond of the song that begins, "This is the Great Britain and I am much smitten." There was also a fun song about bridge...
Tim challenge.
I think he repeated song.
Songs and songs.
Yeah.
And while I'm at it, there wasn't enough Tim in it.
I think there were songs and song.
Oh, OK.
So, 18 seconds, incorrect challenge. 18 seconds for you, Gyles, still on Isambard, Kingdom, Brunel, starting now.
There's a big chorus number that ends Brunel IK, and all the girls...
Esther, challenge.
I don't believe any of this.
No.
I think it's a very blatant deviation from the truth.
I explained it ran aground. I'm just giving you what I tried to pitch it to Tim when we had the meeting.
All right.
He stayed for the whole... Elton left for some reason.
Gyles, I gave it against you before because I thought it was a fiction, that other musical you were writing. And I agree now with Esther. It's another fiction that you are creating. And therefore it is deviation.
Is fiction not allowed then on the programme?
You are allowed fiction, but
others are allowed fiction, but not me, I see.
No, you were laying it down as a fact that you had written this musical.
No, I was presenting my fiction so convincingly that Esther mistook it for fact. She showed us, do you remember all those vegetables, obscene vegetables she showed us? And we believed that they were real. They'd been made in the props department back at Wood Lane. I know that.
No, Esther, okay. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt and say, yes, correct challenge. 13 seconds. You tell us something about Isambard, Kingdom, Brunel, starting now.
I did worry about the parents who would push upon their poor baby these enormous names which would have hung like millstones around his neck until my own first grandson was born, and to my absolute astonishment...
Wow. So Esther Rantzen was then speaking as the whistle went, gain an extra point, and she is moving forward. And Esther, it's your turn to begin. The subject now, the green-eyed monster. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
The green-eyed monster is, of course, that terrible vice and sin, jealousy. And for me, it's encapsulated in Shakespeare's great tragedy, Othello, because there was the mighty hero, the warrior, the soldier, who enchanted his beautiful bride with stories of his heroic achievements. And all would have ended very well apart from Iago, the villain who smiled and who engendered in the aforementioned
Tim, you challenge.
I'm sorry to be a cad, but it was slowly falling apart, I'm afraid.
I don't think it was slowly falling apart. I was getting lost
quickly falling apart, then.
I was getting lost in the tragedy. I was getting to the good bit.
Oh, were you?
Yes. Hang about, Paul.
But Tim's got in with the correct challenge. Another point to him. 31 seconds still available, Tim. The green-eyed monster starting now.
The green-eyed monster, along with many other prehistoric animals, was wiped out by a meteorite 65 million years ago when this object...
Gyles challenge.
Fiction.
Right, if I'm going to give it against you on your fantasy about these musicals you haven't written, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt on this one to say another sort of fiction there, and 21 seconds are still available, Gyles, for the green-eyed monster starting now.
May I give you, as a matter of fact, the story that in 1974 I had the idea of making a musical out of Othello, and discovered that Jack Good had already had a comparable notion, creating a show called Catch My Soul, based on the story of the Moor of Venice, from which play, of course, the phrase, the green-eyed monster comes.
So, Gyles, I hope you feel that was justice, because you kept going and got that extra point for speaking as the whistle went. And you're now equal in the lead with Paul Merton, followed by Tim Rice and Esther Rantzen in that order. And, Gyles, we're with you to begin. And the subject is Kiwis.
Kiwis.
Tell us something about Kiwis, starting now.
Kiwis are fruits, and I was going to do a children's show all about a salad of such things in which the kiwi would have been central, falling in love with the banana, but having a little relationship on the side with the tangerine, mistaking it for an orange, all juiced up in an amusing way. Kiwis also are a nickname for people from New Zealand, where the flightless bird, the kiwi, comes. Kiwi!
Paul Janet.
A repetition of kiwi.
Oh, yes, well done.
Oh, it's kiwis.
Kiwis is on the card.
How can you get kiwis without repeating kiwi?
You have to try and do it in just a minute. So, well, listen, Paul, you played the game a few times before. You've got in with 33 seconds to go on Kiwis, starting now.
It's a shame these birds are killed so people can simply shine their shoes. I ask to sign a petition now in the high street. The kiwi is a much protected bird. Kiwis are beautiful. Their plumage is superb. As you see a flock of them flying across...
Tim Challenge.
They can't fly.
I know. I think you're right.
Oh, I'm thinking of planes.
Flightless birds. Tim, a correct challenge.
No, I didn't know that.
16 seconds are still available. Kiwis, starting now.
New Zealanders are a wonderful people, and they are known affectionately as Kiwis. They are very great rivals with the people across the Tasman Sea.
Gyles challenge.
Repetition of people. Lovely people. They are rivals of the people across
Right
the...
on, right on.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So, Gyles, you've got him with 5 seconds to go.
Yes.
On Kiwis, starting now.
Kiwis is a French question that you ask when your little child is going to do pee.
So let me give you the score now, because we're moving into the final round. And it's very interesting, because Gyles has now taken the lead, 1 ahead of Paul Merton, and he's 3 ahead of Tim Rice, and they're all a few points ahead of Esther Rantzen. No, Esther's never played the game before, and they are 3 experienced players who give no quarter at all. And whose turn is to begin? Paul, we're back with you to start. And the subject is channel hopping. Tell us something about that.
Hopping.
Channel hopping, yes. Tell us something about that in this game, starting now.
Perhaps one of the worst inventions ever was the remote control, because it meant you could then change the channels on your television without getting out of your preferred seating position. Therefore, the whole entertainment world was opened up where thousands of TV...
Tim Challenge.
I'm afraid, by your high standards, Paul, you hesitated. I wouldn't have bleeped anybody else, but you're so good, you actually just hesitated enough.
Thank you for that marvellous compliment.
Yeah. It doesn't get you any extra points, but it's a correct challenge. Right. So you have another point, and you have 45 seconds, Tim. Channel hopping starting now.
I agree with Mr. Merton about this remote control thing. It's a real drag. If you want to change from channel...
Oh, Esther, yes.
Was that a hesitation about change? Did you have problems saying... Oh, thank you.
By his normally high standards, I would say...
I think whatever your challenge, the audience would have agreed with you. So you've got a point, Esther. You've got the subject. You have 37 seconds. Tell us something about channel hopping starting now.
I'm absolutely astonished that the gentlemen on this panel should criticise the remote control, since it's quite clear that only people of their gender actually have the right to control the damn...
Oh,
there's 2 controls.
Gyles.
Repetition of control.
Correct challenge, Gyles. And you have 26 seconds. Tell us more about channel hopping starting now.
Fortunately, I have 7 grandchildren, which means I am able to use the zapper in our house. We have succeeded in getting the subtitles up, not off the screen, and when they come to visit us, we are able to channel hop, which I love to do because I've discovered extraordinary things going on in the television world that I had no idea when we only had BBC One. How can I have made such an elementary blunder?
After you've played the game a lot, you don't usually make those blunders, but you can't help it. So, Paul, I know what the challenge is.
BBC One.
Repetition of B.
B, yes. And you've got him with 2 seconds to go.
That's so disappointing, isn't it?
But well-deserved, because you listen well. 2 seconds, Paul. Channel hopping starting now.
From Lid Airport over to Latuke.
So, Paul Merton speaking of the whistle when gained that extra point. I'll give you the final score. It actually makes it very fair, because Esther, who hasn't played the game before, did very well and came in a magnificent 4th place. She was a few points behind Tim Rice, who was in 2nd place. No, actually, Esther was in 3rd place, because Tim was in 2nd place. But equal in the lead were Paul Merton and Gyles Brandreth. Very fair, equal winners. It only remains me to say thank you to these 4 fine players of the game: Paul Merton, Tim Rice, Gyles Brandreth and Esther Rantzen. I think Hayley Sterling, who's helped me with the score, blown her whistle with such style when the 60 seconds elapse. We thank our producer, Victoria Lloyd. We're indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this amazing game. And to our listeners, from me, Nicholas Parsons, what I say is, tune in again the same time when we play Just a Minute! Welcome to Just a Minute. Hello, my name is Nicholas Parsons. And as the minute waltz fades away, once more it's my huge pleasure to welcome our many listeners, not only in this country, but around the world. And also to welcome to the programme 4 dynamic, exceptional personalities who are going to speak in this subject, and they'll try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviation. And those 4 are, seated on my right, Stephen Fry and Josie Lawrence, and seated on my left, Jenny Eclair and Nish Kumar. Will you please welcome all 4 of them? Beside me sits Hayley Sterling, who's going to run the stopwatch and keep the score, and blow the whistle when the 60 seconds have elapsed. And we're going to begin the show with Stephen Fry. Oh, Stephen, a catnap. Can you tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now?
Well, at my age, you start to rely on catnaps every single day. They're a necessity to get you through the 24-hour period. I seem to remember catnapping was an episode of one of my very favourite cultural events, which was Tom and Jerry, 1951. Fred Quimby, the great producer, Hannah and Barbera, Joseph and William of that name, who wrote it and provided the story. Marvellous talents in animation. It was a terrific thing. He was on a hammock, the cat, Thomas, and he was...
Ah, yes.
No, Cat is fine.
No. God, he's clever. Oh, he's fiendish. You see what he's done? He's tricked me, because Cat is in the title.
Yeah.
I also think he was very clever, because he changed it from Tom to Thomas. Right. So an incorrect challenge. So, Stephen, you have your first point, and you keep the subject. There are 29 seconds still available, starting now.
We had a Siamese called Jamina, not a name I've ever heard of in any other context, and some brigands, villains, thieves stole her. She was catnapped. It was the most terrible thing. A ransom was demanded of us. We weren't sure what to do. Do we call the police? Maybe. Oh, yes. Doo-doos.
Yeah. Doo-doos, yes. I wouldn't do that.
They were next to each other, yeah.
I wouldn't do it to anybody
close, but they were repetition.
Normally.
So, Janie, a correct challenge. And you've got the subject, of course, and you have 11 seconds. A catnap starting now.
There is nothing I like more than to curl up on the windowsill or sofa in a warm spot, feeling the sun warming the hairs on my back.
No. I just think, hang on, a windowsill. Jenny, with all due respect to your comely frame, you couldn't fit on a windowsill.
Oh, Nicholas! No, he's called me fat.
Actually, Stephen, Josie's light came on,
yes.
So she challenged first. What was your challenge?
Yes, I know, and I made a mistake. I thought warm and warming, but I have seen pictures of Jenny's house, and she doesn't have windowsills.
No. But also, yes, I thought you got it for warm, and she said warming.
Yes,
so there's an incorrect challenge, so I can't accept that. And Jenny, you got a point for an incorrect challenge, and you still got the subject, catnap, and you've only got 2 seconds, starting now.
Woe betide me, though, if I try.
In this game, whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point. It was, of course, Jenny Eclair, and she's got the lead at the end of the round. And Josie Lawrence, would you begin the next round? Oh, Easter Bunny. We've got a lot of animals here, but would you tell us something about that in this game, starting now?
Well, I've got a mate called Gerald, who's an actor, but he also is a children's entertainer. And he dresses up as an Easter bunny around Easter and does gigs. The night before one of these shows, he put his Easter bunny outfit into the machine. When it came out of the wash, the stiffener on the ears had flopped. He didn't know what to do, so he got a wire...
Stephen challenged.
Well, it's two gots. I got a friend who
Oh,
thinks
it's
he got...
true.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, I hope I get it back, because it's such a good story.
Sorry.
Don't worry, Josie, you can finish it after the end of the round.
Yeah, I'll tell you in the green room, Stephen.
But Stephen, a
Sorry.
great challenge.
I feel
I'll tell you in the
cruel.
green room.
Right. No, you'll tell us all at the end of this round. There was too much got there. 34 seconds for you, Stephen, if you wanted, on the Easter Bunny, starting now.
I believe the myth of the Easter Bunny comes from Germanic lands, der Osterhase, which means the Easter hare, as a matter of fact. Oster meaning Easter.
Ah.
No, it's
Yes.
one word, Osterhase. I'm very sorry to have to tell you. Yeah.
Well, tell Josie, because she challenged you.
Oh, you're so good.
Oh, that's it. No, it is one word.
I feel like such a dumb cough.
No, Dan, you're not a dumb cough. You know, he does this to trip up his opponents, yeah.
The last time I played with Stephen, he managed to persuade all of us on the panel that a word that he made up was real.
I know.
And I was going, I don't think that's a
However,
word.
wasn't it?
Oh, was it per something?
However, I think it was. With an M in it. However, with an M in it.
And there was one occasion...
And in the end, Nicholas,
one
we were
occasion
going, yes,
when you
Stephen, I
bluffed
think
so
you're
well.
right.
No, but Osterhase is one word, I
Osterhase is
promise
one
you.
word.
Yeah, it is one word.
So an incorrect challenge, unfortunately, Josie. Another point to Stephen. The Easter Bunny is still with you, Stephen. 24 seconds, starting now.
I think the lagomorphs, the lepus, the rabbit, the hare...
Oh, Kumar, Nish, you've challenged.
Hesitation?
Yes, he said Earth.
Yes!
Oh, very good.
So, well listened, Nish, and you've got the subject.
Oh, dear. The consequence.
Yes. Your virgin attempt. 20 seconds. Oh, this could be misunderstood, couldn't it?
That's the
20
name of
seconds
my
are
autobiography.
available for the Easter Bunny with you, Nish, starting now.
Easter, or as I like to think of it, white people's Diwali. It's a very interesting festival, particularly one that's commemorating a death with a small rabbit. I've always found it very strange, especially when I was at school and we would be told that Jesus Christ...
Oh, yes, Josie.
I don't care. I want to tell you about Gerald.
So your challenge?
Hesitation.
Yes, it is there. Right. So 5 seconds to go, Josie. You've got him with 5 seconds on the Easter Bunny, starting now.
He put metal coat hangers up them and then fainted and projectile vom...
So on that particular savouring thought, Josie was speaking. So she's got 2 points. Stephen's got 3, and so has Jenny. Nish has got 1. It's all very close. And Nish, we'd like you to begin the next round.
Lovely.
And the subject is the Great Fire of London.
Great.
I don't know whether you know much about it, but tell us what you know.
Let's find out.
In 60 seconds, if you can, starting now.
The Great Fire of London is my sort of history. It's very much the Ron Seal of events. It does exactly what it says on a tin. There was a great fire.
Jenny challenge.
Oh, there was a gap.
There was a gap, yes.
I forgot what I was talking about for a second. Because I was genuinely...
But
Don't worry,
Jenny,
Nish, I
darling.
can promise you I know so little about the Great Fire of London, apart from its title. You'll have this back in seconds.
No, I'll tell you what, we'll give it back to him now, because he's a newcomer on the show.
Is he getting the benefit of the doubt?
Sweet, sweet pity.
Oh, a double sweet. Yes, he's very welcome to have the round back.
Listen, I'm always very fair.
Yes.
You get a point for a correct
Oh, that's
challenge.
fine then, Nicholas.
Yes, you get your point. But you were interrupted, so you get a point for that. And you keep the subject, The Great Fire of London, and there are 51 seconds starting now.
Good luck, Nish.
Sadly, the rumour that a film was being made about the Great Fire of London starring Vin Diesel as Samuel Pepys and Daniel Day-Lewis as the Great Fire, how is he going to play the fire? The man is an absolute chameleon. Was sadly proved to have been fabricated by me.
Josie challenge.
Two sadlies.
Too sadly, yes. It's a difficult game.
It's really hard, but I'm enjoying myself.
Josie and I are quite menopausal.
Yeah.
There we are. So, Josie, a correct challenge. 35 seconds available. The Great Fire of London starting now.
Well, my family came down to visit me in London. We were outside Buckingham Palace watching all the pomp and ceremony going on. My great-nephew was on the shoulders of his dad, and I said, James, you enjoying this? He said, yes, but when are we going to go to Pudding Lane? Because although he's only 5, he's got this obsession with the Great Fire of London. He's either going to become a historian or an arsonist. So we got off at Monument, where that great obelisky thing is, and there we saw where the Great Fire... He's mad about it.
Josie, you know about the Great... Do you know what year it took place?
1666.
Yes,
September
I know.
the 2nd, I believe.
It's so easy to remember, yes. Thank you, Stephen.
That's all right.
Right, Jenny, we'd like you to begin the next round. Oh, at the end of that round, Jenny, Eclair and Josie have been the lead. The ladies are leading the men by 2 points each. Jenny, my generation. Tell us something about my generation in this game starting now.
I was born in 1960, so my generation is younger than the Who's, and I have no desire to die before I get old. In fact, with all the new drugs around, I'll probably live till 110, getting on everybody's nerves. Shall I tell you what sums up my generation? Stuff like the Bay City Rollers, flared trousers, cheesecloth shirts, puff sleeve blouses, platform shoes, poodle perms, and David Bowie new romantics, pot noodles, they were a novelty, and toast toppers, Vesta chow mains, and disgusting curries. What a generation we have been. All these exciting stuffs that we have introduced to the world and enjoyed. And I'll tell you something.
You covered it all perfectly, but you did leave out Arthur Haynes and Nicholas Parsons.
They were sadly my generation, Nicholas.
No doubt. It was the 60s when we became famous. Yes, it was. Doesn't matter. Nish, you challenged first.
I challenged slightly because I was genuinely getting frightened. I thought you were going to list everything that had ever happened in history. It was amazing.
That was my intention before you interrupted.
No, she was wonderful. All those things did occur in the 60s when she was born. Well done. And there are 14 seconds left, Nish, if you need it. My generation starting now.
My generation may well be the worst generation of all time. All we do is sit around...
Josie challenge.
2 alls, I'm afraid.
I'm getting better.
Jenny, you've got him 7 seconds to go
Josie's.
with another point, of course. My generation starting now.
Oh, sorry, is it...
It was
me?
Josie.
No, wait a minute. Yes, it was
sorry,
Josie. You
sorry.
challenged. You've got a correct challenge. I haven't pressed the buzzer yet. I mean, I haven't pressed the nipple.
What?
The nipple on the stopwatch.
I think
God,
Clement
what minds
Freud's...
you've got there.
Clement Freud's grandfather is watching this.
And he's having a great time.
Yeah.
7 seconds available. My generation, Josie, starting now.
I still think of my generation really peaking in the 80s, and what I notice about my generation is that there were no...
Josie Lawrence, speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point. She's just ahead of Jenny Eclair, and then 1 point behind her are Nish, Kumar and Stephen Fry. Right, we're back with you to begin, Stephen.
Oh, my.
And, a lovely subject. I'm sure you can go on it. Salvador Dalí. Will you tell us something about that great painter in this game, starting now?
Great Catalonian Salvador Dalí, born in, I believe, 1906, or as close as makes no difference. He made an enormous reputation in the 1930s by joining the Surrealist movement headed by André Breton, who fell out of favour with him, really, and he called him A Vida Dollars, which is an anagram of his name because he disliked Dalí's love of money. But his great achievements as a painter really cannot be denied. The persistence of memory, perhaps the most famous, melting clocks in the distance and others being eaten by ants, hugely influenced by Henri Bergson, of course.
Josie challenge.
2 Andres, I'm afraid.
No, that was an Henri.
Oh,
Henri
did you do
Bergson. One French name is much like another.
I'm so
Henri
sorry.
Bergson, I was
Henri
doing
and
that.
Andre,
Author
I'm sorry, it's my tinnitus.
Time and Free Will.
Not at all, no, you added to the fun.
I was really
doesn't it?
enjoying
Yes.
it, though.
I know, it was very, very interesting. And he's going to continue. And he's got another point, and
Sorry,
he's got the
Steve.
subject. He's got 23 seconds. Salvador Dalí, starting now.
Swans reflected as elephants and vice versa, one of his greater paintings too, a crucifixion which no one can forget who has ever seen it. Immense energy and use of space. Very few had his realistic style as...
Oh, Nish, you challenge.
He knows too much, and this is unfair.
He does know a lot, but then so do you. It's a competitions there, Nish. We enjoyed your comment, so we give you a bonus point for that. But you get a point for being interrupted, Stephen. And there are still 10 seconds available. Salvador Dalí, starting now.
After the war, he became something of a celebrity in America. He appeared on game shows. His moustaches were wonderfully famous, of course. Bigotes was his name for them.
Well, Stephen, you do bring an erudition to the show, which is wonderful. And you kept going to the whistle when again that extra point. You're now equal in the lead with Josie Lawrence, and you're both 2 points ahead of Jenny Eclair and Nish Kumar. And Josie, we're back with you to begin. A bitter pill. 60 seconds starting now.
Well, a bitter pill is like when you get a part in a play and then suddenly it's taken away from you because Clarissa knows the producer. You realise you'll never have that leading role, and it's a bitter pill to swallow. Let's not sugarcoat this, people say. But the real bitter pills go back centuries. The first pill was invented by the Egyptians, who used to coat the pill in...
Oh, Jenny challenged.
2 coats.
Yeah. Sugar-coated was the first one.
Oh, she's clever. Oh, you'd think she'd played this game before.
I know. And I have to listen like that. I got it was sugar-coated, she said.
Yeah, she kind of, yes. She mumbled slightly, but...
I'm sorry.
So it was an incorrect challenge, my darling. Yes. So you've got a point. You've got another point, and you've got 28 seconds if you need it. A bitter pill starting now.
Why do pills taste bitter? Have you ever had an aspirin stuck on the back of your tongue? It's blimmin' awful, isn't it? My ma used to give me orange juice to swallow. Or...
Stephen challenge.
Yeah, it was a bitter pill to swallow earlier, and then...
You're quite right.
Double swallow. Too much swallowing
Quite
there.
right. Orange juice does work, funny.
So, Stephen, you've got in with 16 seconds on a bitter pill starting now.
Well, they told me you were dead, Heraclitus. They brought me bitter news to bear and bitter pills to shed, which isn't quite how the poem goes, but one of my favourites. Yes, life is filled with bitterness and a kind of astringent darkness which can occasionally disappoint, and yet often...
So Stephen Fry was then speaking as a whistle when gained that extra point and has increased his lead by 1 over Josie Lawrence, Nish Kumar and Jenny Eclair in that order. Nish, we're back with you to begin. It's subject here, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Will you talk about that subject in this game starting now?
Killing 2 birds with 1 stone is surprisingly difficult. There's a very specific technique to it. A lot of people might assume that you should stand 1 bird in front of the other. However, it is preferential to go for what 10-pin bowling enthusiasts call a 7-10 split. Having the birds stand next to each other, throwing the stone...
Stephen There was two others. There was next to each other and one in front of the other. Sorry, I feel cruel, because that was a good call, and I've got nothing to say on the subject.
Well, that's good. Let's hear from you then.
Okay.
38 seconds. You've got killing two birds with one stone, Stephen, starting now.
By telling you what an arid, sterile and, frankly, uninteresting subject this is, and yet talking about it, I'm killing two birds with one stone, because I'm getting the subject out and, I hope, extending time.
Nish challenge.
Was there a repetition of subject?
There was a repetition of subject.
Oh, yes, you're right, absolutely spot on.
Well, listen, Nish. So you've got it back with another point, of course. 27 seconds available. Killing two birds with one stone, starting now.
Stone choice is an incredibly important part of killing two birds with one stone. The temptation would be to go for a heavy boulder. However, a light, thin pebble is preferential.
Stephen challenge.
I was going to challenge preferential earlier for being the wrong word when you meant preferable, but... Nonetheless, it is a repetition of that oddly selected word.
I got too excited that I had a correct challenge and it went to my head.
Pomposity, I'm afraid.
I deserve it, I'm sorry, it's shameful.
But you have got a correct challenge. And you've got 14 seconds. You tell us something more about killing two birds with one stone, starting now.
It's cruel and unpleasant to kill any bird, you might think. On the other hand, I have to confess to being a bit of a hypocrite. I eat chicken. Therefore, I am responsible for the killing of birds. I can't deny it. More than two, I suspect, really. Lots of them.
Oh, before the whistle went, Jenny.
Oh, yes.
And there was a dreadful
I know there was. Not a dreadful one, but it was definitely...
Not repetition, I mean the other one, hesitation.
I wasn't hesitating so much as using the word it kind of gives balance and rhythm to a sentence, don't you? I find it has... you listen to Churchill there, he never hesitates. He says a lot. And, you know, it's just there.
Stephen, you're absolutely right, but you can't do it in just a minute.
No, fair enough.
So, Jenny, you're correct. He did say and you've got half a second to go. Killing two birds with one stone, starting now.
I once accidentally...
So Jenny Eclair was speaking as a whistle when gained an extra point. She's moved forward. She's still in fourth place with Nish Kumar. Third place, because just one ahead is Josie Lawrence and another couple ahead is Stephen Fry. And Jenny, it's your turn to begin. A holiday in Wales. Strange subject, but not a strange subject, because Wales is lovely, and I love going there. Gosh, you've got to be so careful in this show, haven't you? I love Wales, I really do. I love the people, I love the way they speak. It's so sexy. I used to have a lot of Welsh girlfriends. It was the voice that got me. Oh, you know, it's a very sexy way of speaking, isn't it? Oh, you don't agree with me? All right, I'll get on with the show. A holiday in Wales, Jenny. 60 seconds, as starting now.
Well, this is very pertinent because I am about to go on holiday to Wales with my family. I am so excited because it's such a...
Stephen Shannon.
Two becauses there.
I was so excited about going to lovely Wales.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, well, Stephen, you got in another point, of course. 50 seconds are still available. A holiday in Wales starting now.
So Jonah said to his wife, "Darling, where should we go on holiday this year?" And she replied, "I don't know, my love. Have you any ideas?" He said, "Well, there's a dolphin possibly we could go in. Or what about Wales? I love having a holiday in Wales."
Nish challenge.
Repetition of holiday?
That's in the...
It's on the subject. You
sorry.
can't repeat the words in the subject of the card.
Just happy to be involved, guys.
You are involved. You're you're very good. You're in third place. No, you're in fourth place now. Right. An incorrect challenge. So, Stephen, another point to you. 35 seconds. A holiday in Wales starting now.
I have a dim memory of somewhere called Caswell Bay when I was about 7. Ice creams came into it and a motorboat. I was invited to go with the owner of it as a sort of passenger, I suppose, and I loved it. It was extraordinary how hard the water was. It spanked like concrete. Amazing feeling, really, isn't it? Something as fluid.
Jenny, you've challenged.
I just think we have to be careful. He said spanked. It's all gone a bit... deviating from the nice, clean family fun show that this has always been, Nicholas.
Yeah, but if you're in a boat and you come down with a heavy thing, that is spanking.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a...
That's fair enough.
It's fair enough, isn't it?
I can live with it.
You can live with it. 17 seconds are still available. Stephen, a holiday in Wales is starting now.
One of my favourite poems is Dylan Thomas's A Child's Christmas in Wales. Very beautiful. Sentimental, yes, but somehow more than that. It has a quality of charm and coziness and beauty that we associate with an infant's Xmas, if you want to call it that. Something immemorial.
Right. So at the end of that round, Stephen Fry, with extra points for speaking as a Western and being interrupted, has increased his lead at the end of the round, all the other three, because they're almost equal in second place. And Stephen, this is going to be the final round.
Go so quickly.
Oh, let me give this situation as we go into the final round. Right. Well, Nish, who's only never played a game before, he's equal with Jenny Eclair in third place, but only 1 point ahead is Josie Lawrence, and a few points ahead of her is Stephen Fry. And, Stephen, we're back with you to begin. The subject now is earplugs.
Good Lord.
Could you tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now?
Well, these can be wax or silicone and are thrust into the lugholes in order to defend you against some unwelcome noise. It can be gunshots, or in my case, it can be snoring, of course. Yes, it can be, it can be.
Josie challenge.
No, good point.
A repetition of it can be.
Can be. Josie, you've got in with 49 seconds if you wanted on earplugs starting now.
I always find those wax earplugs that are meant to help you when you go for a swim are dreadful because water always collects behind them and makes it much worse. You must never, ever mistake earplugs for ear pugs, those tiny dogs that live in your orifices. They're dreadful creatures.
Jenny, you challenged.
Two dreadfuls.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh. Very good.
So, Jenny, you got in on the last round too, which is good. 28 seconds available. Earplugs starting now.
Earplugs are really important if you happen to be staying in a hotel where a young couple are having very noisy sex in the room next door. It is disgraceful. So the only other option, if you are sans earplugs, is to turn up the Antiques Roadshow. That'll teach them. And go for a long walk until they have exhausted themselves. Can you tell that this is from personal experience? I actually...
So, Jenny Eclair was in speaking as the whistle went, gained an extra point. And the final situation is that Nish Kumar, who's not played the game before, but he finished up in a very fine fourth place. I say very fine because he was only 1 point behind Jenny Eclair, who's played it a number of times, and she was only 1 point behind Josie Lawrence, who's only played it a number of times, but there were a few points behind Stephen Fry, who has played it a few times, and so we say, Stephen, you are the winner this week. So it only remains me to say thank you to these 4 or 5 players of the game, Stephen Fry, Josie Lawrence, Nish Kumar and Jenny Eclair. I thank Hayley Sterling, who's helped me with the score, and she's blown her whistle with such delicacy when the 60 seconds elapsed. We're grateful to our producer, Victoria Lloyd. We're indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this amazing game, and we're very indebted to this lovely audience here in the Radio Theatre. They've cheered us on our way magnificently. From them, from me, Nicholas Parsons, and the team, goodbye, thank you, and tune in again the same time when we play Just a Minute! Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you. Thank you. My name is Nicholas Parsons, And as the minute waltz fades away, once more it's my huge pleasure to welcome our many listeners, not only in this country, but around the world. But to welcome to the programme four exciting, dynamic personalities. And they are, seated on my right, Paul Merton and Pam Ayres, and seated on my left, Graham Norton and Rufus Hound. Would you please welcome all four of them? And as usual, I'm going to ask them to speak on a subject that I will give them, and they will try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviation. Beside me sits Hayley Sterling, who's going to help me with the score, and she'll blow the whistle when the 60 seconds have elapsed. And we begin the show this week with Graham Norton. Graham, who better? And the subject is breakfast at Tiffany's. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
I don't wish to complain, but it's a very limited menu. I don't know if anyone else has been, but really it's shocking. They shouldn't even advertise it as an actual breakfast. I expect things like eggs or a light waffle or maybe some crispy bacon. Oh, do you know what's lovely? Those hash browns they have in America, they're great, aren't they? With a little bit of bean on top just to make them a bit softer and more moist. But at Tiffany's, none of the above, ladies and gentlemen. Somebody mentioned something about carrots, but who wants that for breakfast? Nobody is who, unless you're a rabbit or a vegetarian. I am neither of those things. Hence my severe disappointment with the range of breakfast items available in that store there on Fifth Avenue in New York. It's the center of Manhattan. Surely they could provide something of nutritious value to the passerby before 11 o'clock when, say, brunch kicks in. We're talking breakfast, ladies and gentlemen. That's what I'm saying.
Well, that doesn't often happen in this game.
I'll get my coat.
Starting with a subject and finishing with a subject and doing it on the very first subject that we start with. And, of course, in this game, you get a point for speaking when the whistle goes, and you get a bonus point because you were not interrupted. So at the end of the round, Graham, you're the only person to have any points. And you're
Let's
in the
just
lead.
Stop time now, shall we?
Rufus, will you begin the next round? The subject is simnel cake. I don't think you can get that for breakfast at Tiffany's.
So, Nicholas, one more time?
What's it?
Simnel cake.
Simnel?
Simnel, S-I-M-N-E-L.
Okay.
Oh, yes! Simnel cake.
The dawn of recognition and complete confusion on the face of Graham Norton. And Rufus, you seem unfazed by it. So...
Well, I'm glad of that.
Would you try and talk on the subject? 60 seconds if you need it, starting now.
It does put me in something of a moral quandary, I shall confess, because backstage I saw a clipboard, and on that clipboard was written the word simnel cake.
Sorry.
You're right to, Pam.
It was clipboard. You said clipboard twice. Sorry about that. She lied.
Yes. So, Pam, that is a correct challenge. She did repeat it, and so you have a point for that. You take over the subject of simnel cake. 51 seconds starting now.
Simnel cake is baked traditionally at Easter and features a thick, sticky layer of marzipan through the middle and a layer of the same...
Yes, Graham challenge, yes.
Repetition of layer.
Yes, there were too many layers, Pam. So, Graham, a correct challenge. There's still 40 seconds available. Tell us something about simnel cake starting now.
Well, I don't think there are many people on planet Earth who don't know that simnel cake is something that is baked traditionally at Easter. And has a thick layer of marzipan through the middle of it. There is something else, but I can't quite remember because I wasn't listening to every detail. But the important facts are it's cake, and I'm sure people eat it, and it probably contains sugar of some sort. Maybe eggs. I can't be 100% certain. Now, simnel cake...
Paul challenge.
We're teetering on hesitation.
He was teetering, yes.
And what he was saying was absolute bollocks. I mean... Yeah, but once you run out of what Pam said, then it was, I think it's cake that there might be sugar in it, people eat it.
I'm sorry,
There's
Paul.
people at home trying to take down his recipes.
They should have booked Mary Berry. I should have done.
Unfortunately, I can't give a bonus point for bollocks, and... but I can say a correct challenge, Paul. And there are 13 seconds for you on simnel cake. starting now.
It's the cultured tones of Nicholas Parsons saying I can't give any points for bollocks, which set me off laughing. I wish I had some simnel cake here. They say the silhouette of simnel cake resembles the Taj Mahal at moonlight. But sometimes...
So Paul Merton begins the whistle and gained that extra point. And he's now just behind Graham Norton. Then comes Pam Ayres and then Rufus Hound in that order. Pam, we'd like you to begin the next round. Oh, gosh, it's getting quite an erudite show, isn't it? Copernicus.
His recipe for simnel cake, wasn't it?
Simnel cake, Copernicus, but there we are. Pam, do your best. I'm sure you know all about it. You've probably put in one of your poems, haven't you? Copernicus?
No, as it happens, no.
With 60 seconds available if you need it, Pam. Copernicus, starting now.
A less scholarly person than myself, indeed an ignoramus, might look at the name Copernicus and mispronounce it Copernicers, a garment of extreme discomfort due to its inflexible nature. However, Copernicus, the man, unlike myself, was a mathematical genius who revealed to the world a new theory about the universe because he believed, unlike Ptolemy, you will recall, that the universe circled around the sun.
Paul challenge.
I don't think the universe circles around the sun. That's deviation.
Not the universe, no.
No, not the universe.
Our planets do, but not the universe.
Yeah, I meant to say our solar system, but it came out wrong because I was flustered.
But, darling, you went for quite a long time, and you went actually for 38 seconds.
Oh.
And there are 22 left, but Paul had a correct challenge.
Not mine, sadly.
No. But, Paul, do you know anything about Copernicus?
No, and I don't need 22 seconds either.
Well, do your best. Yeah. Copernicus, 22 seconds, starting now.
Copernicus looked at the simnel cake and he thought to himself, who would hate me enough to push that through my letterbox? Who would? Who would hate me enough?
Pam, you've challenged.
This is a load of old cobblers. It does not relate to Copernicus.
No, simnel cake going through his letterbox,
no.
But he has no connection with Copernicus. So I agree with you, deviation, and you've got the subject back, which you didn't want, but you've got it. 17 seconds, Copernicus, Pam, starting now.
Copernicus kept to himself his discovery because he feared it would get him in trouble with the church, which was likely to bestow upon you a death of horrible and unimaginable type if you argued...
Oh, Paul, you challenged.
Hesitation.
There was an in there, Pam, yes. Paul, 3 seconds, Copernicus, starting now.
Copernicus stood up in the middle of his house, which is historical facts.
So Paul Merton was then speaking as a whistle when gained that extra point, and he's increased his lead ahead of Graham Norton, Pam Ayres, and Rufus Hound in that order. Paul, we'd like you to begin the next round. A more basic subject now, keeping your feet on the ground. 60 seconds, as usual, starting now.
I'm not quite sure what my estimation of my intellectual capacity is, but keeping your feet on the ground as opposed to Copernicus is a completely different subject. If we'd said to the Wright brothers, Wilbur and Orville, keep your feet on the ground, where would we be now? We'd be waiting at Gatwick, but there'd be no airport there. I would say to people, the advice to keep your feet on the ground is fairly sound, but sometimes we must also dare to fly, throw ourselves off the ledge, hoping that the air currents will lift our wings above the horizon. So we soar in the zephyrs.
Graham challenge.
You won't fly if you jump off, so you'll just fall to the ground.
I didn't say.
That's terrible advice.
Might be a ground floor ledge. I didn't say where. I was speaking metaphorically.
I know, people who listen to this all over the world, don't they, Nicholas?
Yeah.
Well, I agree that people do chuck themselves off ledges when they've heard just a minute. I agree. The statistics are frightening.
So they don't need encouragement.
I must say the image you conveyed, Paul, was that if you were very high
Your
up...
heart soars, your imagination soars.
It's a very difficult decision, isn't it?
No, I don't mind. Give it to Graham.
I don't mind either. Paul, keep it.
Well, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt, Graham, and say that you have 30 seconds. You tell us something about keeping your feet on the ground.
Yes.
30 seconds, starting now.
Keeping your feet on the ground is one of the simpler things you can do in life. It's really your default setting, I would say. Because if they aren't, you are jumping. And you can't do that for very long unless you're Jane Fonda, who's been doing it for over 70 years. She's 102 now, but ever so fit. Did you see her the other night? She was wearing an extraordinary sort of toilet roll holder as a dress. I didn't understand it myself, but she had a great jawline for a woman of her age.
Pam challenge.
Deviation.
What?
Jane Fonda's jawline, which, to me, a duffer though I may be, does not seem to have much to do with keeping your feet on the ground.
Curse you, Pam. You rumbled me.
And Pam, you've got him with 1 second to go. And keeping your feet on the ground, starting now.
I once did
So Pam Ayres, speaking of the whistle when gained, she's now 1 point behind Paul Merton, equal with Graham Norton, and they're all ahead of Rufus Hound. And Rufus, we're with you to begin, and the subject now is the Rat Pack. I'm sure you know something about it, but tell us more in this game, starting now.
The Rat Pack was a phrase used to describe a group of performers who loved one another's company. Indeed, they performed as a band of brothers. They were Oh, you absolutely
Rufus. Oh, the poor man's crying. I know it's a difficult game, but Rufus,
yes,
darling boy.
Yes, Nicholas. Yes.
You're giving a wonderful performance.
Well,
He's wiping his eyes with his microphone at the moment. A bit of advice I give is that even if you stumble, keep going. It might be generous.
This I accept.
Right.
It's more of an existential pain that I feel at the moment.
I think we're all feeling that pain.
Yeah, thanks.
But Pam, you challenged first, right?
I did. I think it was hesitation.
Yes,
I think Rufus rather ran out of steam.
And he collapsed.
I didn't run out of steam, I just ran out of ability.
No, your ability's got you on the show, but I don't know how to finish that sentence.
Leave it. I'm going to write that down.
51 seconds, Pam, on the Rat Pack, starting now.
One morning, my father was riding his bicycle steadily towards Farringdon beside a stubble field. To his surprise, he heard a tremendous rustling in the corn, and looking to his left, he saw an enormous pack of rats which stretched from one side of the pasture to the other. And the rats...
Rufus challenge.
Hesitation.
Yes, we call that hesitation, Rufus. Well, listen, you've got your first point, and I said that to get the audience on your side, Rufus, so have confidence now.
OK.
Right, OK, ready.
Today the revolution begins.
I do say begin now, because you have played the game once before, haven't you?
Oh, just the once. But to be honest, Nicholas, it was so long ago, I've sort of...
I'll give him a bonus point for that. There are still 30 seconds available, Rufus. The Rat Pack starting now.
The Rat Pack were these men who had come together to give people...
Paul challenge.
Well, it kind of was hesitation.
It was a definite hesitation.
Yeah.
Paul had a correct challenge. He gets a point for that. But I'm going to be generous and say you can keep the subject. 26 seconds still available. The Rat Pack starting now.
They were show business titans who truly loved one another. The chairman of the board was Frank Sinatra. Old Blue Eyes, he seemed to be the leader of the piece, whilst Dean Martin was the court jester, if you will, a man who was drunk the entire time. Leading
Pam, you challenged. And there are 9 seconds still available. The Rat Pack starting now.
It is a well-known fact that rats migrate across large areas.
Rufus challenge.
Repetition of rats.
Yes, because she talked about this colony of rats before, didn't she?
She did.
Yes, well, listen, Rufus. So you're not such a duffer at the game after all, are you?
What?
Don't listen to him, Rufus. Don't listen. You just play the game. You're very good.
Okay.
Absolutely. And you've got him with 4 seconds to go.
Okay.
So keep going.
Come on.
Take your breath. 4 seconds. The Rat Pack starting now.
It also led to a change in the way that Americans viewed race because Sammy Davis Jr.
So Rufus, Hound with all kinds of aggression there, pulled himself up, and he's only 2 points behind Pam Ayres and Graham Norton, and 3 behind Paul Merton, who's our leader. Pam, it's your turn to begin. The subject is free verse. I have something about verse with you, my darling. 60 seconds, as usual, starting now.
A man standing, shouting at the top of his voice, "Buy my free verse, only £25 a ream, guaranteed to bring tears to your eyes," could not be accused of actually offering free verse, because free verse is a type of unstructured poetry. A good example would be the 23rd Psalm. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. Here the straight jacket of just a minute causes me to pause." A good example of something which is...
Oh, yes, Graham, listen.
blow.
Well, listen.
Yes, it was a good example.
It was a good example, yes, there we are. And that big laugh that came in there was that we were all crossing ourselves as poem to the psalm. Graham, a correct challenge. 21 seconds available. Free verse starting now.
Free verse is essentially stuff that doesn't rhyme, I believe. Is it not, Pam? Pam is nodding at me now. I've said Pam 3 times now.
Repetition of Pam. Self-confess.
So another point to Paul.
I was thinking, isn't it odd we don't speak to each other during it? And then I said your name 3 times, and I realised that's why we don't do that.
Paul, 15 seconds still available. Free verse starting now.
When you wander through the worlds of poetry, there are many different forms, but free verse is something that particularly catches my eye. Perhaps the finest writer of free verse poetry that this country has ever known, maybe even the world, I would say, is undoubtedly Sir
So Paul Merton was then speaking as the whistle wind gained that extra point. He's increased his lead by 1 over Pam Ayres and Graham Norton together, and then a little bit further behind is Rufus Hound. Paul, we're back with you to begin. The subject, the Hebrides. Tell us something about those lovely islands in this game, starting now.
Well, I bought this magazine about men who like to dress up as brides, but it wasn't Hebrides, it was Hebrides. I made a huge error. I'd taken out a year-long subscription by then. So when the postman shoves it through my letterbox every Monday, I say I thought it was a monthly publication. He says, well, it comes out weekly these days. So anyway, what are we talking? What's the subject? Oh, the Hebrides. I've got to get out of the Hebrides. What?
Yes, but you paused then.
I know, I've forgotten what the subject was.
I know.
There was hesitation, I feel.
There was hesitation.
Yeah, there was hesitation.
Yes, you forgot the subject. Graham got in first with a point, of course, for a correct challenge. The Hebrides with you, Graham, are starting now.
The Hebrides share quite a lot with belly buttons, in that there are inner and outer. The outer are the oldest ones, I'm pretty sure.
Pam challenge.
Outer, repetition of outer.
You're quite right.
Yes.
Oh,
I know my belly buttons.
You're like a white witch.
Pam, you have 34 seconds. The Hebrides starting now.
I believe Ayres is one of the Hebrides, and on a visit to that island, I entered a primitive habitation as a tourist. In the centre of the building was a fire. Consequently, the establishment was so full of black smoke that you couldn't actually see any details of the conditions in which the ancient people lived. Another interesting point about that...
Graham challenge.
That point wasn't interesting. I feel I speak for the room. It was just some smoke in a hut.
But what a strange audience. They applaud insults. So, Graham...
No, facts.
Actually, it wasn't very interesting, was it?
No!
But I'm afraid it doesn't come within the rules of just a minute.
No, it does, because she was deviating, because she said another interesting fact, and she hadn't already given us one, so that's a deviation.
I know, but to her it could be interesting.
Oh, that's just silly talk,
Nicholas.
Nicholas.
I thought it was interesting.
I have to interpret the rules, and that is very fair,
right.
I think so. Right.
I thought it was very interesting indeed. I paid good money to go in there.
Giving you the benefit of the doubt, Pam, a point to you, and there are still 9 seconds on the Hebrides starting now.
A famous product of the same island is a tweed, and my father adored that type of fabric and always had his...
So Pam Ayres, then speaking as a whistle Wayne, again that extra point, and she's taken the lead ahead of Paul Merton and Graham Norton, equal in second place, and then Rufus Hound. Graham, we're back with you to begin. The subject, toast. Tell us something about toast in this game, starting now.
I must admit, I'm not a fan of toast. Those people who go home of an evening going, oh, it's just lovely, I made myself some toast. I would never do that. Bread is already dry. Why make it more like that? Indeed, I could say drier, because that's a different word.
Rufus challenge.
How can you not like toast? I
I was going on to explain.
No, but that's just awful.
It's
awful
like
life.
Seminole cake, isn't it?
Yeah.
But the trouble is, Rufus, it's your personal opinions that count in this show.
Yes, toast is essentially hot, stale bread.
No, listen, I'm willing to take pretty much moral relativism on all things, but this is the British Broadcasting Company, and if we can't just accept toast is inherently good, where are we?
You should have saved that for the show. I'll give Rufus a bonus point because we enjoyed what he said. But, Graham, you weren't interrupted because it was an incorrect challenge. And you keep the subject. 47 seconds on toast starting now.
I don't think there's anything more delicious than some toast in the morning when you come down from bed and you look at the cupboard and you think to yourself, what do I really want?
Rufus, you've challenged.
Deviation?
Yes, deviation.
A man's allowed to change his mind.
Not on this
Rufus
show.
spoke so eloquently about toast.
I know.
He talked me around.
But you were so quick to pick up on that, Rufus. Yes. So deviation, he hated it before and now he loves it. Right. So, Rufus, you have 36 seconds. Tell us something more about toast, starting now.
What in the name of all that's holy is there not to like about toast? It is essentially an edible plate. Yes, indeed, when it is warm, one places butter on top of it and that melts in, but in many ways, butter is itself...
Paul, you challenge first.
Yes, repetition of butter.
Yes, repetition of butter. And you've got a point. You have 23 seconds. Toast is a subject, starting now.
Toast, of course, can be brown bread, white, granary, seeded. Marmite, with our other products available, is one of those things that if you spread on top of the surface of the bread, people...
Rufus challenge.
A repetition of bread?
Yes, it is not. The subject is toast. Well, listen.
Yes.
Right. And Rufus, you've got him with 11 seconds to go. Toast, starting now.
One should see toast as a plateau on which other treats are placed. Sweet things, jams, marmalade, fruits of every description when crushed into the top.
Well, Rufus, you've certainly got this audience on your side, and you have leapt forward. You are now only 1 point behind Graham Norton and Paul Merton, and only 2 points behind Pam Ayres, who's still in the lead. And this is to be the last round.
Shame.
And let me tell you, Rufus, who's done that magnificent leap forward, only 1 point behind Graham Norton and Paul Merton, and only 2 points behind our leader, Pam Ayres. And also, Rufus, it's your turn to begin. The subject... Rufus, please, calm down.
Listen, I know this is just show 1,000 to you, but this is my one chance at this after today.
But this is also radio. Visual humour doesn't work very well.
Ventriloquism was huge at the birth of radio. I don't see why mime can't be.
I'm not working you there, Rufus. You're working yourself. Right. It's with you to begin, and the subject is Glastonbury. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
Glastonbury, famous for so many things. This little spot in Somerset, chiefly known, I would imagine, for its arts festival. It's held, weirdly, in a place called Pilton and not Glastonbury at all, which is interesting about the nomenclature. Indeed, just round the corner from there is another small town called Street, which is mainly called such a thing, called.
Paul challenge.
A repetition of called.
Called, yes. Well done. You went for 20 seconds. Paul, you have a correct challenge. You have the subject. 40 seconds to go. Glastonbury, starting now.
A lot of my friends, performers, go to Glastonbury every year, and I've been tempted once or twice. Inevitably, it's turned out to be an occasion where the rains have opened up 4 or 5 days before the event, and everything becomes extremely muddy. I saw one party goer getting around by being pulled along in a rowing boat. Such was the condition of the ground that it was moist enough to sustain such a vessel. But, of course, the audiences at Glastonbury are always great fun. How they managed to call it its Icelandic connections are well preserved.
Rufus, you challenge first.
That was a deviation from language.
Yeah. Just because it was a language you didn't understand.
Rufus, a correct challenge.
Yeah,
a point to you. And you're now equal with Graham Norton and only 1 point behind our joint leaders. And you have 10 seconds still available. Keep going. Glastonbury, starting now.
The festival hosts so many wonderful performers. David, yes, you're right.
Did we have festival before?
No.
Yeah.
No, last time I said vestibule. I appreciate at distance
it sounds almost like the same word, yeah.
Well, it's probably because you stand too close to the speakers.
Yeah.
I don't think you did say vestibule.
The Glastonbury vestibule. Oh, come on.
You are bluffing now. And I don't know what to do because I want it to be equal. And they're all equal.
Typical lefty BBC.
Repetition of B.
Paul, we give you a bonus point because you were a correct challenge and it was an interesting thing. But for the sake of fun and fairness, I'm going to leave it with Rufus to continue.
Where does the fairness bit come into that? I can see the fun. I mean,
it's fun for Rufus.
Because even if he gets 2 points, he'll still be the winner.
Oh, OK.
Right.
No, where's the fun in this?
Well, the audience are enjoying it. 6 seconds. Come on, Rufus. Give us a bit more on Glastonbury, starting now.
Glastonbury represents a time when people of different stripes come together and sing with one voice, all garnered together under the umbrella.
I wanted Rufus to finish because it's only the second time he's played the game, and you finished with style and panache. But it's only 1 point that separates all of them. Graham was in 4th place, but only 1 point behind, equal in 2nd place, Pam Ayres, who's won before, and Rufus, who's never won before. Equal in 2nd place, Rufus, Hound, Pam Ayres, and 1 point only ahead of them was Paul Merton. So we say, Paul, you are the winner this week. Well, we do hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute. And it only remains to say thank you to these 4 fine, exciting, humorous, eccentric players of the game, Paul Merton, Pam Ayres, Rufus Hound and Graham Norton. I thank Hayley Sterling, who's helped me with the score, blown her whistle with such style. We thank our producer, Victoria Lloyd. We're indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this amazing game. And we are grateful to this lovely audience who've cheered us on our way magnificently. So from the audience... and from me, Nicholas Parsons, and the team, thank you. Tune in again the same time when we play Just a Minute! Welcome to Just a Minute. My name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it's my huge pleasure to welcome our many listeners, not only in this country, but around the world, and also to welcome to the programme 4 exciting personalities. And they are, seated on my right, Paul Merton and Tim Rice, and seated on my left, Gyles Brandreth and Esther Rantzen. Will you please welcome all 4 of them? And as usual, I am going to ask them to speak on a subject that I will give them, and they will try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviation. Beside me sits Hayley Sterling. She's going to help me keep the score. She will blow the whistle when the 60 seconds have elapsed. And we begin the show this occasion with Gyles Brandreth. Gyles, the subject in front of me is Kermit the Frog. I don't know whether you're a fan or not, but please tell us something about that character in this game, starting now.
Given that I have 60 seconds to fill on the subject of Kermit the Frog, I'd better go back to the beginning, which is probably 1955, when Jim Henson, a young American puppeteer, conceived this little creature for a 5-minute show.
Paul Challenge.
Was he not Canadian?
No.
I'm not sure. I don't know. No, I'm wrong.
He was American.
Thank you.
So, that was an incorrect challenge, Paul.
Yep.
So Gyles has a point. He has 46 seconds still. Kermit the Frog, starting now.
The fellow was more lizard than frog initially, but by 1965, when he featured on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, the name Kermit the Frog was introduced by that entertainer. Subsequently, of course, there was Sesame Street, through which the triumph went on, and we became the Muppets in due course. The bromance that started with...
Tim Challenge.
Repeat of course, and due course.
Yes.
Oh,
yes. Well, listen, Tim. A wordsmith doesn't miss a word like that. Right, Tim?
Going to be like that, is it?
Yes.
It's nearly always like that, but it's great fun. So, Tim, a correct challenge, 23 seconds still available. Kermit the Frog, starting now.
I had never realised until hearing Gyles's fascinating piece that Kermit the Frog was actually French. Yes, this extraordinary amphibian has conquered the world, not only in America and...
Esther, challenge.
Are you talking about Gyles as the extraordinary amphibian who has conquered...
Which isn't deviation at all, it's spot on, isn't it?
Do you think that Gyles has conquered America? He's pushing his luck in this country.
Oh, Esther, there's no quarter given in this show, I can assure you, because this is the only second time you played the game, but they're really biting in there, aren't they? So what is the challenge?
I thought it was
chairman.
One of those thoughts that the audience might like and you might give me as sort of patronising but charitable.
Please give Esther a bonus point. I don't know why, but she's pleaded for one and she's got it. And it was the incorrect challenge, Tim, so you still have the subject. 8 seconds still available. Kermit the Frog, starting now.
Kermit is a true icon of the entertainment world, up there with Vera Lynn, Al Bowley, Neil Diamond and Barry Manilow.
In this game, whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point. It was Tim Wright. Tim's in the lead at the moment, one ahead of Gyles and Esther. And Esther, we'd like you to begin the next round. The subject is changing the flag. So will you tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now?
Well, nobody should start changing the flag. Don't mess with it. It's a symbol of our national identity. It brings together 4 valid countries who care about each other, unite and prosper in this wonderful union, unless Scotland decides to leave us, in which case we will have to start changing the flag, because we will have to remove the cross of St Andrews, and that will make it look a little bare. So I have a suggestion. Why don't we put a different symbol in the middle which stands for England? And I would like to mention a cup of tea, because after all, Lebanon has the cedar in the centre of their flag. Why shouldn't we have our favourite beverage, and it would have the great advantage over the current flag because you'd know which way up it was. If it was upside down, then the poor tea... No. I think, audience, I was discombobulated by your kind applause. So if you wouldn't mind holding your breath when you can tell that I'm actually reaching the last lap and I may never get there, and then just stay your
Esther, excuse me, you have been challenged, darling.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But I know what you're thinking, Esther. This is better than sex, isn't it? Yeah.
I'm not going to hear that voice in my head when I go to sleep tonight.
Paul, your challenge.
Repetition of T.
That's right, yes, T. Well, Paul, a correct challenge. He's got 6 seconds. Changing the flag, Paul, starting now.
As the measles spread around the ship, we realised the quarantine flag would have to be hoisted right to the very...
So Paul Merton was then speaking as the whistle went and gained that extra point, and they're all equal together at the moment. And Tim, it's your turn to begin. The subject is Land's End. Tell us something about that geographical place in this game, if you can, starting now.
If you leave London by the M3 and totter down the A302+1, then go through several countries such as Wiltshire, Somerset, Devon, eventually you will arrive in Cornwall, at the very tip of this majestic, beautiful county known in its local dialect as Kernow. You will find Land's End. Frankly, Land's End is a little bit disappointing. It's rather like a tired Starbucks meeting a knackered Mac. I wouldn't really recommend a visit except for the...
Gyles challenge.
Intervention on behalf of the Cornwall Tourist Authority. Land's End is one of the most fascinating and beautiful places in the British Isles.
Well, Tim doesn't think so.
Deviation from the truth. I've been there. It's a beautiful place.
No, I was just coming to the fact the views, God's creation of Land's End is sensational. What man has done to it is disastrous.
No, can I say, you've come here today First of all, we had that terrible racial stereotyping, Kermit the Frog. Now, you've traduced one of America's leading coffee exporters, and you're telling people that Land's End is a rough joint. I think it's just not on. I think this kind of abuse
Gyles.
I'm feeling almost bullied and hostile. We may have to call human resources.
Gyles, I'm glad you got that off your chest. But I'm not going to allow it. No, the point is that Tim is entitled to his opinion. You may disagree, Gyles may disagree, but Tim, you get the benefit of the doubt and a point and 25 seconds, Land's End, starting now.
I was quite clearly only an idiot would dispute this, referring to man's despoilment of Land's End. What God and nature created is magnificent.
Paul challenge.
We did have magnificent before.
We did.
You did
well done,
indeed,
Paul.
yes.
That's the kind of challenge I like.
Good. A magnificent challenge.
A damn decent challenge.
Yes.
A good middle-class challenge.
The sort of challenge you could salute and fight for in a while.
Well done, Paul and Tim. Right. Paul, you've got in with the correct challenge. 13 seconds to go. Land's End, starting now.
I looked up from the sea and I realised that my destiny lay in that small parcel.
Esther, you challenge.
I'm not sure whether one is supposed to challenge if someone says I twice.
No.
No.
OK.
That's cleared that one up.
If they said it 3 times, I might have granted.
OK, I'll take it
But
back.
I think it gets too pedantic every
I agree.
But challenge, when he says, aye, captain on that ship, then you challenge.
So we don't charge any points on that, because Esther was seeking for information, because she's only second time she's played the game. 5 seconds still with you, Paul. Land's End, starting now.
A rabbit moves slowly across the grass, bending its head to chew at a disconnect.
So Paul Merton was then speaking as the whistle when gain that extra point. He's in the lead at the end of that round, and he also begins the next round. Paul, the subject is filibustering. 60 seconds starting now.
Well, filibustering is a phrase that's often used to address speeches that are made in the Houses of Parliament and other legislature around the world where someone is trying to drag out the time so that a vote can't take place on the issue under discussion. Cool, thank goodness for that.
I'm extremely worried about Paul's health.
You're not the only one.
I think he was giving a demonstration of filibustering, but that's not within the rules of Just a Minute. You have to speak on the subject, not illustrate it. So I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, Esther. And say you have 40 seconds, if you want it, on filibustering, starting now.
I can't say I do want it, because it's...
Paul challenge.
What's your challenge for, then?
Give Paul a bonus point because we enjoyed the interruption.
Yeah.
Esther, you get a point because you were interrupted. And you have 39 seconds on filibustering, starting now.
It's rather worrying when you listen to the House of Commons debates and you realise that these people that we pay for are in fact attempting to prolong a debate simply in order to prevent some very good piece of law to be enacted. I know Gyles has very often done this. He's known for his filibustering. In fact, they used to call him the filibusterer of the House of Commons, and that is why I think he took to television and The One Show and Just a Minute and all the many other things, including the jumpers, the books that he produces, because the filibustering he did left such a scar upon the memories of all those in the House of Commons.
Well, Esther, you certainly have the audience on your side. Anyway, you were speaking as a whistle when you gained that extra point for doing so, and you are now just 1 point behind our leader, Paul Merton, and Gyles, we're with you to begin, and the subject is the acid test. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
The acid test. I'm conscious that we're playing this wonderful game of Just a Minute in what would have been the year where we could have celebrated the 90th birthday of the late, great Kenneth Williams, the most wonderful practitioner of this extraordinary entertainment.
Tim Challenge.
I'm afraid he stumbled.
He stumbled.
Yes.
We call that hesitation. So, Tim, you've got 45 seconds. You tell us something about the acid test, starting now.
Come back with me to 1958 and my days as a spotty schoolboy when we used to play around with hydrochloric acid or sulfuric acid in...
Oh, yes. Too much acid.
Nice, yes.
Acid's in the card.
Acid is on the card.
So what's your challenge?
I did buzz, but I forgot that acid was on the card.
So an incorrect challenge.
That certainly is.
Right. So, Tim, you still have the subject. A point, of course. 35 seconds starting now.
And the test that we used to carry out in the laboratory there was very exciting. Nay, daring.
Full challenge.
As soon as somebody says nay daring, you know they've got no idea what they're talking about. Hesitation, I'm afraid.
No, it wasn't. That was a bit of old-fashioned English.
Oh, OK.
And that's the way they talked at prep school in 1958.
Benefit of the doubt to you, Tim. The acid test is still with you. 26 seconds starting now.
If we did anything wrong during these exciting lessons, we would be thrashed within an inch of our lives and then flung into a cold bath and told to go on a 9-mile run. It was terrific.
I'm so horrified. I do hope that was deviation. Did they really do that to you?
Oh, it was much worse than
But
that.
isn't it, Mark? It's fantastic. Here, when you call Childline, Esther answers the call immediately personally. Fantastic. It's taken him since 1958 to report the abuse, but well done.
I think the thing that's particularly worrying is you were told to get into the bath and then do a 9.5-mile run.
That was why it was so cruel. Naked and wet.
I think we need to clear the building.
Esther, I think he was exaggerating, I agree. And so we're going to give you the benefit of the doubt.
Where did they cane you? Where did they cane you? Was it near the Barnstable area?
No. I was Parsons 2, because my brother was Parsons 1. Bend over, Parsons 2, hand me my cane. I'm going to make a mockery of your little behind. Whack, 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 whack. Oh, I can feel the pain now.
Were you caned with a duck? That's very cruel, isn't it?
No, I was always fooling around, trying to make my chums laugh. I was a school clown. It was my embryonic desire to be an actor. And it hasn't worked here. No, you're all right, Esther. And there are 14 seconds. You tell us something about the acid test starting now.
Well, perhaps it was because I went to a girls' school, but our science lessons were incredibly dull. We did do the acid test, and I seem to recall it involved something called litmus paper, and one half of it went one colour, and the other half... not half, the other bit.
The one half and then the other half.
Went a different...
Repetition of half.
She didn't get the other half out, Jess, before you challenged.
Repetition of one.
I didn't say one.
Well, yes, one half went, and then you said one earlier. There was a repetition of one. During the discourse you've just been given.
I'm going to give Esther...
The acid test will be what Nicholas decides.
Benefit of the doubt to our second-time player of the game.
I agree.
Esther, you have another point, and you have only 2 seconds left. The acid test starting now.
Personally, I always preferred the art classes, which...
So at the end of that round, Esther Rantzen was speaking as a whistle went, gained an extra point, and you will be pleased to hear she's taken the lead. Ahead of Tim Rice and Paul Merton. And Esther, it's your turn to begin. Hypnotising chickens. 60 seconds if you want it. Starting now.
Hypnotising chickens is a great art. It appears that you take the head of the chicken and you place it on a white line, and then the poor poultry animal then begins to scutter its little...
Tim challenge.
Well, there were 2 pretty important thens.
There were, weren't there?
And I think then being a 4-letter word...
Yes, all right. I give you the benefit.
I feel very bad
I've given
about
Esther
this already.
benefits of the doubt. You've got your benefit of the doubt. So, point correct challenge, Tim. Hypnotising chickens starting now.
You get your chicken, put it on a chair, and look the little clucker in the face and say, "Listen, mate, go to sleep." And they do. It is quite staggering. I've done this quite a lot with chickens over the...
Giles, challenge.
If we can challenge a repetition of then, we can challenge a repetition of quite.
Yes, indeed you can.
You're so right. Hoist on my own petard.
37 seconds, Giles, with you on hypnotising chickens starting now.
It's extraordinary the fascination that hypnotising chickens has had on the literary world. Friedrich Nietzsche, in Thus Spake Zarathustra, gives a description of hypnotising chickens in a farm outside Zagreb. Later, we find Emil Zola, in one of his extraordinary novels, talking about hypnotising chickens, but of course in French, because it can happen in that country as well. We come to George Orwell.
Esther challenge.
What is French for hypnotising chickens?
Hypnotising chickens.
Well done, Gyles. I can't give you 2 points, but you get a point for an incorrect challenge. 10 seconds, hypnotising chickens, starting now.
There was an amazing pop group that I knew when I was on my acid trip back in the 60s called Hypnotising Chickens. We did a kind of dance which involved...
So Gyles Brandreth was in speaking as the whistle went, gained the extra point, and he has leapt forward. He's actually in 4th place, but only 1 point separates all of them. Tim writes, we'll ask you to begin the next round. Oh, a nice cultural subject. Oscar Wilde. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
Oscar Wilde was, of course, one of the greatest literary geniuses of the 19th century, and he died just as that century was coming to...
Oh, Gyles.
Oh, sorry, I'm falling mistake.
Yes, too many centuries. Oh. And the 52 seconds still available, Gyles. A point to you, of course. Oscar Wilde, starting now.
Oscar Fingal of Raherty Wills Wilde.
Paul challenge.
Isn't Gyles the president of the Oscar Wilde Appreciation Society?
Yes, he is.
And he's got the subject of Oscar Wilde?
I didn't have it. Tim had the subject, but lost it.
Yes, true, actually, yeah.
That's true. Hadn't really got going yet.
No, he hadn't got going. No, not at all, no.
And if you know a lot about it, you're quite likely to repeat it someday.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, an incorrect challenge, Gyles. 49 seconds available. Oscar Wilde, starting now.
His parents were Sir William Wilde, who was an oculist, and a lady called Constanza. There was a brother known as Willie and a sister, Azola, who died when quite young. Also, there were half-siblings, 2 of whom...
Esther challenge.
Surely the subject is not Oscar Wilde's entire family.
Well, it's a minute to fill, and I'm giving the story of Oscar Wilde. I'm giving a context so important. And you, I think, are somebody as to appreciates the significance of family life.
But, Esther, he did...
I think the quality of his parenting, Esther, is something you've talked about a great deal over the last 40 years or so. Just give Wilde a break. If we'd given more time and attention to this, the story might have ended more happily.
He did repeat there were.
There were. You repeated there were.
So, Esther, we want to hear from you on this. As well as, I agree with Paul, we're taking it away from Gyles because it is one of his pet subjects. 33 seconds, Esther. Oscar Wilde, starting now.
Speaking of family, I have a great 5 times aunt who actually was involved in Oscar Wilde's life. She was married to a diamond merchant called Ernest Leveson.
Oh, yes.
Paul Chalice.
Well, this has come off the subject of Oscar Wilde.
Hold on. Ada Leveson, who was married to Ernest Leveson...
Who isn't Oscar Wilde.
Who was my great 5 times aunt, was a close friend of Oscar Wilde. And
Darling, you had...
Right, so she wasn't Oscar Wilde,
But
then.
when he went to Reading Jail, she was the only society hostess that actually continued to involve...
Yes.
As the president of the Oscar Wilde Society, can I step in here to say that Esther is absolutely right. The Levesons were a key part of the Oscar Wilde story, so it's interesting.
But, Gyles, the point is...
It's possibly more Radio 3 on a Thursday evening at 11 p.m., but it's nonetheless marvellous to bring it into the mainstream like this.
And I have to try and be as fair as I can within the rules of just a minute. You hadn't got to the subject of Oscar Wilde within about 20 seconds of which you've been going. So actually, Paul has a correct challenge. And he has 22 seconds on Oscar Wilde, starting now.
Winston Churchill was talking to Bobby Moore, and he said, look, there's Jimmy Greaves over there. And Walt Disney walked in front of a big crowd and Bob Hope, who were all fans of Oscar Wilde.
New challenge.
That had nothing to do with Oscar Wilde until he desperately, after the challenge, brought Oscar Wilde into the conversation. But I think you were making a very astute point.
I was getting round to it.
Yeah.
So, Tim, a correct challenge. 18 seconds still available. Oscar Wilde, starting now.
Oscar Wilde had a very famous brother called Marty, who in turn had an extremely celebrated daughter called Kim. And every...
Deviation.
Yeah, Marty Wilde was not his brother.
How do you know which Oscar Wilde I was talking about?
Well, we've
Marty
assumed...
Wilde has a brother called Oscar, who lives in Stevenage.
Yeah.
I don't think you're correct. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt, Esther, and say there's 10 seconds. Esther, Oscar Wilde, starting now.
So poor old Oscar was sent to Reading Jail for not committing a crime, but just because certain members of the aristocracy took against him. And when he came out of that particular...
So Esther Rantzen would then, speaking as a whistle when, gain that extra point, and she has increased her lead at the end of that round, ahead of the other three, who are almost equal in second place. And, Paul, we have a lot of this subject in this game, the Blarney Stone. So that's the subject. Tell us something about it in 60 seconds, if you can, starting now.
The Blarney Stone is situated about 6-7 miles outside of Cork, and tradition goes that if you lay on your back and stick your head towards the Blarney Stone and kiss it, that somehow good luck will accrue to you. It's not a particularly easy position to adopt, because the Blarney Stone is situated in such a way that it's not a case of...
Esther Challenge.
Was there a repetition of situated, or did I make that up?
Oh, God, who knows?
Did you say it was situated outside Cork, and then did you say...
You did indeed. Well, listen, Esther. And you've got in with 42 seconds on the Blarney Stone, starting now.
I've always thought it very unfair that the Irish seem to have the gift of eloquence. When you look across broadcasting, so many of our finest...
Tim Challenge.
Hesitation,
no, there.
party.
So you got in on the Blarney Stone, Tim, with 32 seconds to go, starting now.
The Blarney Stone is in Ireland. I've never been anywhere near the Blarney Stone, but fortunately the people near me have, and I've learnt an awful lot in just...
Esther Challenge.
Were there two nears there? Never been near the Blarney Stone, and the people near me.
Right.
The gloves are off.
She's had her baptism of fire.
That's it. It's all over now.
Yes. 23 seconds with you, Esther, on the Blarney Stone.
It's hardly worth starting, Esther. Okay.
Go on, give Gyles a bonus point. We enjoyed that. Esther, you got a point. You have the Blarney Stone. 23 seconds, starting now.
Oscar Wilde was, of course, an Irishman, and so is Terry Wogan. And what links them is this wonderful lyrical eloquence.
Gyles is challenged.
Repetition of lyrical from earlier.
Yes, it was lyrical before.
Just goes to show, doesn't it?
Yeah. Just goes to show that now, Esther, this is personal.
So, Gyles, a correct challenge. 16 seconds, the Blarney Stone, starting now.
I was recently asked to be the new face of the Stanner Stairlift commercial. I said no. But when the Irish Tourist Board called, inviting me to be the person to examine and then exemplify the best of what the Blarney Stone has to offer, I leapt at the opportunity. This is the kind of...
So, Gyles Brandreth, speaking as a whistle when, gain that extra point. And we are moving into the final round. I'll give you the score as it stands at the moment. Paul Merton, who usually comes out on top, he's struggling a little. He's 1 point behind Tim Rice, who is 1 point behind Gyles Brandreth, who's 1 point behind Esther Rantzen. In other words, 1 point separates all four of them in that sequence. And who is it to begin? Gyles. Gyles, the subject is the Grand Old Duke of York, starting now.
The Grand Old Duke of York, the original royal bipolar member of the family. Because when he was up, of course, that's where he was. The figure that in history is regarded as being the Grand Old Duke of York was probably Frederick, Duke of York, during the Napoleonic Wars, the son of King George III, who had a wonderful dress sense which you can enjoy if you go to the Duke of York steps, which are at the foot of Lower Regent Street.
Paul challenge.
There was a very slight hesitation.
There was a hesitation,
slight,
Paul.
but,
So you've got in with 31 seconds to go on the Grand Old Duke of York, starting now.
The old pub stood on the corner for many years, but then one day it was demolished, brick by partition. Fell down. The regulars who used to hang around the public bar wiped a tear from their face. They remembered the days...
Gyles challenge.
The regulars would have more than one face unless it was a very strange-looking person. The regulars wiped the tears from their face.
Yes.
Their faces is correct.
No, there's a lot of inbreeding. Everybody looked the same.
Deviation from correct use of English.
Yes, very much.
All right, I give you the benefit of the doubt. 14 seconds. The Grand Old Duke of York, Gyles, starting now.
Curiously, the original nursery rhyme of the Grand Old Duke of York predates the Duke of York of which we are speaking and goes back to about 1409 and probably relates to a Grand Old Duke from the country of France.
So Giles Brandreth was in speak as a whistle when gained that extra point, and I will give you the final score. It's very close. They're all almost equal. In second place, equal, was Paul Merton and Tim Rice, but only 2 points ahead, equal, were Giles Brandreth and Esther Rantzen. So they're the winners. So it only remains me to say thank you to these 4 fine competitive players of the game, Paul Merton, Tim Rice, Giles Brandreth and Esther Rantzen. I thank Hayley Sterling, who's helped me with the score, blown her whistle with such style after the 60 seconds elapsed. We thank our producer, Victoria Lloyd. We're indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this amazing game. And we're very grateful to this lovely audience here who've cheered us on our way magnificently. So from them, from me, Nicholas Parsons, thank you. Tune in again the same time when we play Just a Minute! Welcome to Just a Minute. Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute walls fade away, once more it's my huge pleasure to welcome our many listeners, not only in this country but around the world, but to welcome to the programme 4 exciting, dynamic people who are going to show their skill with words and language as they try and speak on the subject that I give them, and they try and do that without hesitation, repetition or deviation. And they are, seated on my right, Stephen Fry and Josie Lawrence, and seated on my left, Jenny Eclair and Nish Kumar. Will you please welcome all 4 of them? Beside me sits Hayley Sterling, who's going to run the stopwatch for me and help me with the score, and she'll blow the whistle when the 60 seconds have elapsed. As we begin the show with Jenny Eclair, and who better? Jenny, a vintage year. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
The year I was born was vintage, like a fine wine, full-bodied, characterful and fruity, also with a tannin bitter aftertaste. I can leave people with a familiar feeling of a hangover, like an Alsatian has bitten the back.
Well, Stephen, you challenged.
It was like, a couple of likes, like it just now, and then there was like a fine wine earlier.
Also, I was talking rubbish.
Well, yeah, that's all right.
I would like to thank you,
Amiable
Stephen,
rubbish.
from saving me from national humiliation.
Jenny, there's nothing in the rules of the game which says you can't talk rubbish, provided you keep going without hesitation, repetition or deviation. Stephen, a correct challenge, so you get a point for that, and you take over the subject. There are 40 seconds still available. A vintage year starting now.
When I was 17, it was a very good year. That's what Frank Sinatra, 100 years old this year, said. Actually, it wasn't.
Nish challenge.
Hesitation.
Why?
He
said, ah.
You're cruel, but fair. Yeah.
Nish, a correct challenge. You have 31 seconds if you need it, and the subject is a vintage year starting now.
I would argue 1985 was a vintage year. Why? Because it was the year I was born. And myself has done.
That's what this show does to you.
As long as you don't overdo it, Nish, you can say the word I more than once.
Okay. It wasn't that, it was your lovely use of language, which is, so it says, is the way it gets you, doesn't it? But who challenged? Josie, you challenged first, didn't you?
Hesitation.
Hesitation.
Myself has done.
Right, Josie, 21 seconds are still available. A vintage year starting now.
A vintage year, a year that you remember as being totally successful and beautiful in your mind. My vintage year, although there are quite a few, must be when I was a student at Dartington College of Arts, leaving my parents behind and growing into the woman you see.
Oh, Josie. It was getting very emotional. We were speaking as the whistle went, and in this game, whoever it is at gains an extra point. So, Josie, you've got the lead at the end of the round, and Nish, we'd like you to begin the next round. Russian dolls. Do you have any at home, by the way?
I don't know, and I think this next minute could be very interesting. I say minute, that's a very generous summation.
Don't waste it.
Don't waste it. Right. Russian dolls, 60 seconds if you want it. Nish, starting now.
Russian dolls. Dolls that are Russian. Dolls within dolls. Dolls inside dolls. Dolls from Russia. A country.
I think that deserves a bonus point for the way you kept going. But, Jenny, you challenged...
A representation of Russia.
Oh, yes, this is Russian dolls.
Russia.
And you repeated
Russia rather than Russian.
Right, well, listen, Jenny.
Petty of me, but, you know.
Jenny, can you...
really saved me.
I was thinking of your mother listening to this, sobbing in her kitchen. But I thought he was a bright boy. Oh, Nish!
I think it was very bright to do what you did and keep going. The audience loved it. 46 seconds available, Jenny. Russian dolls starting now.
These were quite a fad back in my school days, and many of my chums had them lined up on their windowsills. I craved Russian dolls. Mummy, please. But my mother, Northern quite hard, said, make your own out of toilet rolls, girl. Use your imagination. So I did. And on my bedside table there was a collection of lavatory holder Russian dolls painted just like the wooden originals, actually done with I was back there.
So, Nish, you challenge first.
Yes.
You really want the subject because you've got it.
Hesitation. Yeah, I want it. I feel more ready for it than ever.
Well,
3 seconds left.
You've only got 7 seconds, so you're all right. And Russian dolls, back with you, Nish, starting now.
Russian dolls. Dolls that are Russian. Dolls inside dolls.
Actually, Nish, no one's ever done that before. When they've got back in, repeated what they've said before. There's nothing in the rules that says you can't do that. Anyway, Nish, you were speaking when the whistle went. You're now in the lead.
Oh, Nish, yourself done good.
Josie, we'd like you to begin the next round. The subject, a nice erudite one, Homer. Tell us something about that Greek poet or character, whatever you want, call him, starting now.
Homer is one of my favourite literary heroes. He has the ability to take you to fantastical lands and a unique way with words. I often quote Homer. Here's a few. Donuts. And, of course, dough. He has a family. Marge, his long-suffering wife, Bart, his son, and Lisa and Maggie, the daughters. He has never written the Iliad or the Odyssey because he's two-dimensional and wouldn't be able to hold a pen. Bart is...
Stephen, you challenge.
There's 2 Barts, I'm afraid.
Yes,
It was great,
yes.
though.
I meant to say Homer.
I know, you did. But anyway, listen, Stephen, you've got in with 19 seconds to go on Homer, starting now.
No one actually knows who the poet Homer really was, when he exactly lived, or even if he could write. There's a strong theory that it was the oral tradition that was passed on to subsequent generations, who then wrote down the epic poems we know as the Iliad and Odyssey.
It's lovely having on the show. We get so much interesting, erudite information, Stephen. And you kept going to the whistle when, again, that extra point for doing so. And you're in second place behind Nish. And it's also your turn to begin. And the subject is My First Flat, starting now.
Was 48 Draycott Place, SW3. How lucky I was to be able to live in such a swish part of London. Very few who left university would now be able to have such accommodation, I'm sorry to say. Also, you could argue my first flat happened on the M11. Awfully embarrassing. I think I may have run over a nail or some other sharp object which punctured the inner tube and caused me no end of inconvenience. What do you do? Well, on television I'd seen people jacking up their automobiles and attempting to undo the nuts and replace with a spare, but I didn't really have any full acquaintance as to how this worked. It seemed to be a mystery. My first flat was really a nightmare. It was a terrible thing. I waved my hand by the side of the motorway, asking people if they could help. Very few did, until a kind gentleman eventually stopped and demonstrated to me the art
Stephen, did you know that you can take out insurance for that? And there's a big organisation which has got...
You could join the AA, but obviously you couldn't mention it in a round of just a minute.
No.
Can you imagine?
True.
AA.
I know.
Yes.
And they would have come to help you, Stephen. I can recommend that you do that.
I'll remember that.
Because I can't see you putting a spare wheel on very well.
No.
So, Stephen, you were speaking when the whistle went. You gained an extra point. You've taken the lead ahead of Nish and Josie and Jenny. And Jenny, we're with you to begin. And the subject is The Tale of Peter Rabbit. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
The Tale of Peter Rabbit was written and illustrated by Beatrix Potter, a woman who lived in the Lake District, talented writer and painter. The fable tale.
Nish, you challenge first.
Hesitation.
You interpret it as hesitation.
Yeah.
So you've got another point, Nish, and you're moving forward, and you've got The Tale of Peter Rabbit, and there's 47 seconds if you want it, starting now.
The tail of Peter Rabbit is white and fluffy. As with a lot of rabbits, regardless of whether or not they are named Peter, it is near the back of the animal and is very often used to illustrate happiness in an animal, say a dog.
Oh, Stephen challenge.
Yeah, another animal there.
Another animal.
I mean, I was on thin ice as I opened my mouth.
Is it not called a scut?
Scut, yes,
anyway,
good word.
I think you'll find it's called a scut.
She's pleased with that.
All right. You might get in again, Jenny. You can use that. 29 seconds for you, Stephen. And another point, of course. The Tale of Peter Rabbit, starting now.
What do I remember of the Tale of Peter Rabbit? Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail, the siblings of Peter Rabbit, of course. The gardener's name was MacGregor, who was very much the enemy. I recall lettuce as being soporific, which caused them to fall asleep. Very touching. The drawings were marvellous. Beatrix Potter herself, as has been said, deeply talented woman, not just as a children's illustrator and author, but
Just before the whistle went, you heard, yes. Nish, you got him first.
Hesitation.
Yes.
No question.
And you've got him with 2 seconds to go. Not popular. It doesn't matter. I'm sure you've got something to say in 2 seconds on The Tale of Peter Rabbit, starting now.
The Tale of Peter Rabbit.
So Nish, our second-time player of the game, got a point for speaking as the whistle went, and he's moved forward. He's taken the lead, one ahead of Stephen Fry. And Nish, we're back with you to begin, and the subject now is My First Love. Can you tell us something about that? Who said ah?
I did.
Oh.
She's still waiting.
It's true, actually.
Oh, I don't know who was saying ah for. Anyway, My First Love is the subject, Nish. 60 seconds starting now.
My first love was an unusual lass. Her name, Buffy Summers. Her occupation, vampire slayer. She lived in Sunnydale, a town, whilst fictional, that was still lovely and sunny. She was...
Jenny, you challenge.
Lots of hesitation and also repetition of the word her
I was too pleased with myself that I got Sunnydale and Sunny in, and I was sort of hoping someone was going to... But then I looked like an absolute idiot.
Jenny, you got in first. There's hesitation. And you have 43 seconds available. My First Love, starting now.
My First Love appeared on a screen in front of my eyes when I was 8 years old and recently returned from 4 years in Berlin, where...
Josie challenge.
Repetition of years.
Oh, yes.
8 years, and yes, you're absolutely right.
Spotted.
Oh.
Well spotted.
Oh.
Well, seeing as I've never been in love, I've got absolutely nothing. I'll have to make something up.
You're too modest, darling. I think a lot of viewers and people in the theatre have fallen in love with you across the footlights, I'm sure.
Yeah, whatever.
Well, if I wasn't otherwise promised, you could be one of my loves. 34 seconds available for you, Josie. My first love starting now.
Actually, my first love was a young lad in primary school called Kenneth Barnsley, and I loved him because he gave me a purse. On one side it was suede, and on the other
Jenny challenge.
Repetition. Not repetition, sorry. I've got to use the wrong word. I meant it was a terrible hesitation.
That's
Yes,
right,
it was.
tried to... 23 seconds are still available, Jenny. My first love starting now.
Top of the Pops. 7 o'clock, Thursday night. Who did I see? Peter Noon from Herman's Hermits. Blonde and toothy, that was it. A god amongst men. All I remember doing was feeling the sensation of warmth and taking my socks off. What on earth was going on? This was even...
So Jenny begins speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point. She's moved forward. She's still in third place, but she's moved. She's one ahead of Josie. And Stephen, you're in second place, one behind Nish, Kumar, who's still on the lead. So Josie, we're back with you to begin, and the subject now is Plymouth Rock. Oh, my Lord. Tell us something about that historic place in this game, starting now.
The famous Plymouth Rock is not a sticky, sugary stick that has the word Plymouth going through it, or a band that does the pubs around Plymouth and plays heavy metal. No, the...
Stephen.
I nearly said swear
trying to
words.
avoid famous
I
again.
know.
There was a bit of a...
I know.
So, Stephen, you've gone in first?
It's not that famous. I've never heard of it.
Oh, I've heard of it.
No.
But I can't tell you now, because I'm Stephen.
We'll find out from Stephen, he probably knows. 45 seconds, Plymouth Rock, Stephen, starting now.
Well, the verse to Anything Goes by Cole Porter begins, and times have changed, and the Puritans landing on Plymouth Rock, it landed on them.
Oh, Nish challenge.
Hesitation?
Yeah, yes, and he landed, didn't he?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah,
We give you the hesitation, and you'll give you 36 seconds if you need it. Plymouth Rock, Nish, starting now.
I don't know anything about Plymouth Rock, but what I do want to say is I cannot believe I'm leading so far.
You're not leading now. Janie, you challenge first.
I could walk into that gap. And I'm a big girl.
So hesitation.
Yeah.
Jenny, you have 28 seconds if you need it. Plymouth Rock, starting now.
I know nothing about Plymouth Rock, but I know Plymouth Rocks.
Oh, Stephen challenge.
Two no's.
You
I
knew
know
too much,
nothing, but I
darling.
know.
I know.
Oh, yeah, I'm very glad.
Stephen, 24 seconds. Tell us more about Plymouth Rock, starting now.
Well, there's an argument that Plymouth Rock is a recent addition to the mythology of the Mayflower and the arrival of the Puritans in America in the 17th century. It's in Massachusetts. There is a museum which has a piece of it. I've touched it myself, making a program on the subject of the United States, as it happens. Americans have this view of the Plymouth business as being somehow very much a part of who they are and what they're...
So Stephen Fry begins speaking as the whistle went. Gained that extra point, and he's moved forward. He's now one ahead of our previous leader, Nish Kumar. And
Hubris, thy name is Kumar.
and quite a few ahead of Josie Lawrence and Jenny Eclair. And Stephen, we're back with you to begin. The subject, a very simple one, the fish finger. So if you want to write it down, that's fine. The fish finger, 60 seconds, starting now.
Well, I believe these entered the British kitchen round about the 1950s. Cod, plaice, haddock, gurnard, those sorts of whitefish, were the constituents of something that I have to confess I've never actually enjoyed or tasted. I know you'll hate me. It's the same with brown sauce.
Who's challenged? Jenny, yes.
Deviation, how would he know he doesn't like them if he hasn't tasted one?
Who doesn't like them?
You said I don't like them and I haven't even tasted
I don't like the look of them. I think they look horrible. I just don't like to look at them. They look greasy and unpleasant. At that time, someone pressed a buzzer. I don't like them, and I've never tasted them, and I don't want to because the reason I don't like them is because I discussed them.
Again, Nicholas, he did this last time. Do you remember?
Listen, I throw myself on the mercy of the court.
I don't like hanging out of a tall building, but I've never tried it.
Exactly.
Why are you supporting him? I was about to give it to Jenny.
I have no idea.
Stephen, I think I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to Jenny.
Yes.
Because I think you did convey what you were saying, that you didn't like it. But you were talking about tasting all the time, and then said you didn't like them. So it's logical that we should have thought, well, if he doesn't like them, how could he have tasted them all? So, Jenny, benefit of the doubt, a point to you, 41 seconds, the fish finger starting now.
One of the compensations of motherhood is hoovering up your children's cold, leftover fish fingers. There is nothing more delicious. It is ambrosia from the gods, pallid, sloppy, with tomato ketchup, couple of peas stuck on the top. Oh, yes. In fact, I have snatched fish fingers from the mouth of my child.
Josie Lawrence in charge.
Now, I'm going to be naughty here. Was it the fish finger or fish fingers?
The subject is
it's a repetition of fingers.
Oh.
Yes.
Nuanced.
The subject is the fish finger.
Challenge.
And you were talking about fish fingers.
How dare I?
It. And Josie was listening well, so she's got in with a point, of course, and 15 seconds available. The fish finger. Josie, starting now.
I love the fish finger, especially between two pieces of white bread. Used to live on it when I was a student. Also, my friend had a really good recipe for fish finger pie, which basically involved...
So Josie Lawrence will then speak at the whistle when, gain that extra point, and she has moved forward. She's still in fourth place, but she's moved. But she's only 1 point behind Jenny. And she's only 2 points behind Nish, and 3 points behind Stephen. And we're back with you, Jenny, to begin. And another erudite subject, Pride and Prejudice. 60 seconds starting now.
Written, of course, by Jane Austen. This has been turned from book to film and TV series. Unfortunately, I get confused between these genres. I know it's about 5 Bennet girls who all need marrying off. Their mother's desperate to get these girls off her hands. I know.
Oh, yes, Stephen.
Girls, I'm afraid.
Yeah, truly girls. Yes, there were a lot of girls in Pride and Prejudice, but can't...
All with a heaving bosom. Yes.
Only in the film. Right. 37 seconds, Stephen. You've got in with the correct challenge, so you have a point. You have the subject of Pride and Prejudice starting now.
It is, I think, a testament to the extraordinary quality of Jane Austen's writing that ask people what Darcy looks like and they'll all say he's dark. She never describes him physically at all. It's something to do with his character. The novel was first written as an epistolary book, rather like Sense and Sensibility, her first published work. And then she called it First Impressions. A good title, but not as good as Pride and Prejudice. That's the one that lives on, isn't it? For many people, the book they would take to their, desert island, that sort of place, because somehow it's the first book that really...
Josie challenge.
So sorry. Repetition of book.
Book, you're right, yeah.
Yes,
absolutely.
right. And so a correct challenge, Josie. You've got in with 5 seconds to go. Pride and Prejudice, starting now.
Why did Jane Austen call it Pride and Prejudice? Well, Darcy was...
So I just had a message that we're moving into the final round. Oh, you're a lovely audience. at this particular moment as we move into the final round. Let me tell you, it's very, very close. They've all got lots of points. But Jenny's only just in 4th place, 1 point behind Josie Lawrence, who's 1 point behind Nish Kumar, and he's 2 points behind Stephen Fry. And Nish, it's your turn to begin. And the subject now is a lovely subject. A penny for your thoughts. Tell us something about that phrase in this game, starting now.
A penny for your thoughts. For your thoughts, a penny. Penny thoughts for your... Can I buzz myself?
You can, so you buzz yourself. What's your challenge?
Absolute nonsense.
Oh, no, careful. You can talk nonsense in this show, but if you hesitate... So you did hesitate, didn't you?
Yeah, I did hesitate, because even I couldn't believe those words were coming out of my own face.
So, Nish,
yep.
That was...
So have I successfully challenged myself?
Yes, you've challenged yourself.
This is incredible.
It's not a thing
it's like Dr. Strangelove.
It's not a thing we encourage, but it's a correct challenge. So I give you a point for a correct challenge. And say, well listened. And you've 49 seconds if you want it. And I try a different tack at this time. A penny for your thoughts, starting now.
A penny for your thoughts, my dear mother, as you sit here listening to me talk absolute nonsense on Radio 4's Just a Minute, broadcast on the Double BC.
Stephen.
Such a brilliant avoidance of repeating B that he then just fell silent into a
just
hesitation.
Before the show, they warned them, one of the errors that often first people step into is they use the word BBC because it's so natural, and you are repeating B. So they warned Nish about this before the trip, so he gets that, and of course he pauses.
So proud.
So, Stephen, you challenge first. Hesitation. There are 37 seconds, Stephen. A penny for your thoughts, starting now.
Well, a friend of mine who used to write scripts for Coronation Street once told me that if you didn't know how to begin a scene, a great way to do so was to have Bet or someone else at the bar say to her cohort, a penny for them, love. And she'd go, what? Your thoughts. And she'd go, oh, sorry, Chuka, we're miles away. And they actually have about 20 scenes that begin exactly like that in that particular series. It's something that...
Jenny, challenge.
Begin twice.
Yes.
Nice.
Right, yes. Right.
Yeah.
So, Jenny, you've got in with the correct challenge, and there are 13 seconds still available. A penny for your thoughts, starting now.
There is nothing more annoying than somebody interrupting your thought process and saying, a penny for your thoughts. At this point, I want to say, do you know what? I'm thinking you're a really...
So let me give you the final score. Oh, it's all so close. They're all so talented and so funny. Right. But in 4th place was Josie Lawrence, and she's 1 point behind Jenny Eclair, who's 1 point behind Nish Kumar, and he was 1 point behind Stephen Fry. So we say, Stephen, you are the winner this week. Oh, so it only remains to say thank you to these 4 fine players of the game, Stephen Fry, Josie Lawrence, Nish Kumar, and Jenny Eclair. I thank Hayley Sterling, who's helped me with the score. She's blown her whistle beautifully. And we're indebted to our producer, Victoria Lloyd, and we're deeply indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this amazing game. We're indebted to this lovely audience here in the Radio Theatre, who've cheered us on our way magnificently. So from our audience, from me, Nicholas Parsons, and the team, goodbye, thank you, and tune in again when we play Just a Minute!